Reprendre votre thérapie, d'aller en partie. Votre fils a quand même...
Welcome back to the show, my friends. I'm your host, Eric Szilagyi. First of all, I hope that all of you have enjoyed your Christmas weekend. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday weekend. This episode will air the day after on the 26th, and hopefully will be a welcome gift to those of my listeners who, much like myself, love the topic of Sasquatch. It is indeed a gift to myself to have the opportunity to have a conversation with this guest, as I have admired their work within the topic for many years. This will indeed be a treat. If you've had an uncomfortable experience and you'd like to have it featured on the show, please get a hold of me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. The world wants to hear your experiences, so please get a hold of me and let's tell yours on a future episode of Uncomfortable. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram, both at Uncomfortable Podcast 65. And please remember, leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you can. That's the main way that you, the listener, can help get this show out in front of more people. And with more people listening, that means more people coming forward with their experiences. Also, for those of you who might be looking for a little bit of a change of pace, please head over to Uncomfortable Podcast on YouTube and hit subscribe and the notification bell. That way you will be made aware every time I upload a version of the podcast in video. You can start looking for that on a regular basis now. If you're interested in helping support the show, head over to patreon.com/Uncomfortable Podcast 770. Check out the 3 levels we have there and see if there's anything that appeals to you. Or if a standalone contribution is more to your liking, you can do that as well through Red Circle. The links for both will be in the show notes below. September 14th, 2024 is the date for Bigfoot and Brews and Spirits 2. Again, being held within the confines of Sister Lakes Brewing Company in Dowagiac, Michigan. We've already gotten Amy Boo from the Olympic Project and Project Zoo Book. She is going to be one of the speakers. And on the spirit end of things, we will be having the Archbishop Christina Rake, who will be a special speaker. Look for tickets and information coming up in the early part of January. I would imagine that by February 1st, we will have tickets on sale. Again, that is September 14th, 2024 for the Bigfoot and Brews and Spirits 2. As for tonight's guest, this gentleman's accomplishments in the field and appearances in shows, documentaries, and podcasts are literally too numerous to mention. So I'm going to let him do that. He is an accomplished artist, but what I think I admire most about this gentleman and what has placed him squarely on my wish list for interviews is his innate ability to tell wonderful stories and accounts. I suppose that is somewhat in part because of his heritage and the rich oral tradition that he comes from. So if you're ready, let's get into it. If you will, please give a warm, uncomfortable welcome to tonight's guest, Thomas Sewid. Thomas, welcome to Uncomfortable.
G'day, Kusla. Greetings. Thank you for having me and inviting me onto your podcast. And
Greetings, sir.
hello to all the listeners out there in 67 countries. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit unbelievable. It is. It's kind of like a dream come true that I didn't really know I had the dream up until a couple of years ago. So I've been very fortunate, and the growth of this show has been amazing. So as I said in the intro, you've been on my radar for years. I've seen you in so many different things, whether it be a small little segment or a 15-minute segment or documentaries. You've been in this topic for so long. And the thing that gets me about listening to you is your ability to just draw people in with your stories. And it's done in such a matter-of-fact way that I don't know that there's anybody that could sit there in front of you and tell you you were full of shit. You just can't do
Well,
it.
they'd also get one of those. I am a commercial fisherman, retired after 48 years, 58 years old, going on 59. Been an Indian, North American First Nation, American Indian, whatever you want to call us nowadays. But I am a Kwakwakiwak member of that tribe from northern Vancouver Island, British Columbia. And I was raised as a commercial fisherman. We used to go out when I was a kid, and all through my life, we still do. We go out in the wintertime to shellfish dig in the middle of Timbuk flipping nowhere, Broughton Archipelago. There's nothing out there but the odd, homesteader and, one or two Indian reservations that you can only access by boat or float plane. So when you're out
Yeah.
there clam digging, a lot of times was by myself. You'd be digging away and you could hear the roar of the white gas lantern giving you your light. All of a sudden, you'd hear bang, and then you'd hear a big rotten tree get pushed down. And you're just like, oh, they're here. And, it's a Sasquatch, what we call Chonacha. And it's just them letting you know that they're there. So, even though you'd be so scared, you could put a piece of coal up your backside when you leave the beach with a handful of cockles, the favorite food of Sasquatch, a type of shellfish that when you break them, open them up, they look like a shrimp tail or a prawn tail inside, and they taste in between a prawn and an abalone. They're really good, real delicacy. Well, Sasquatch is like them. Well, you take an armload of those cockles and you walk up to the tree line. It's low tide. It's 1 foot zero tide, maybe a minus tide. So you're could be 100 and 200 yards from the tree line. Well, when you walk up with your little lantern and your flashlight, you're trying to hold on to, you get to the tree line, you throw the cockles in, and you just say, Alakasla, go in peace, and walk back down and clam dig, and hopefully the Sasquatches will come and take those cockles that you gifted them and leave you alone on the beach. And that's what being a coastal Indian is all about. We know that it's all about respect. We respect the Sasquatch, they will respect us in turn. So all my life, like I just, to me, Sasquatches are just another critter with a heartbeat, leave tracks, leave poop from time to time, get angry with us from time to time, like every other animal. Watched a good one on social media today where this guy's sitting in his pickup truck after a hunt, and the doe deer comes walking up and starts banging him with her hoofs. To me, that just blew me away, but it just shows us that every animal can get angered with humans, as we know,
Yeah.
and Sasquatch included, and that's where the respect comes from. So, me, when I, lived my life as a commercial fisherman, I was always in logging camps tied to their docks, ports, Indian communities, even fish farms. And, when I was at these places, especially the ports, when all us fishermen got together at a table with a bunch of beer, I'd always ask that question. Hey, you're Haida, you're Shimshan, you're Hiltzook from Bella Bella, you're Kittasu Hey from Clem 2. That's where Les Stroud went. The
Right. Yeah.
name Clem 2 tweaked. And I'd ask them, what do you know about Chonacha or Sasquatch, Bigfoot? Right away, you'd see them put their beer down. And, well, I'll tell you a few stories about those big hairy buggers. And I'd hear all these stories and also get the native names, what their beliefs were. I'd ask them, my tribe, the Kwakwakiwak, we wear the masks and the fur regalia, and we come out in the big houses, the ceremonial big houses during a chief's potlatch, and we perform the Chunahua, the wild woman of the woods, where it comes out and it rubs its eyes because it just woke up, because that's what her ancestor experienced, the Sasquatch in the daytime. And then it yawns with its hands on the dance floor. Then it walks out and it starts going like this. What it's representing is that picture right there. Basket lady. Some of the tribes call the Sasquatch basket lady because she has a basket on her back where she'll have her baby Sasquatch. But according to my family's legends and stories and my tribe, the basket is because the Sasquatch, Chonacha, will grab misbehaving children,
Yeah.
rub spruce sap, pitch from a tree in their eyes so they can't open them and they're blind. And she throws them in the basket, takes them up to her, up the mountain through the forest to her invisible home. And that's why we can't find Sasquatches. And that's where she boils and eats the misbehaving children. So when I was a young boy, behave yourself, Tommy. Otherwise, Jonah is going to come in with big hairy arm. And then as a little boy, I'm walking through the town when I went down to the other end for candy at the store with some friends that were older than me. And all of a sudden I looked up and the sun was going down over Vancouver Island to the west of Alert Bay. And I'm like, oh no, it's going to be dark. I'm misbehaving. I got to go past the graveyard where all the memorial totem poles are standing and that big Jonah, puckered lips, outstretched arms, big breasts, fierce looking, sleepy eyes carved in all these poles. All I kept thinking is, Jonah is going to come out and grab me and throw me in that basket because I'm misbehaving. And I passed that ancient boogeyman story on to my two children. Even years ago in the early 90s, when I had a girlfriend who had two young boys, oh, I remember being out in the bush with them. And, one kid had peanut butter and jam going down his shirt. And I'm like, hey, don't eat like a slob. You use a napkin. Don't get all that stuff on you like that. Jonah is seeing you not eating properly, and she's going to come grab you. And that night, when we were trying to go to sleep on my commercial fish boat, that little boy was crying away. And I could hear my girlfriend, Calvin, what's wrong? Why are you crying? Close the porthole. Jonah's big hairy arm going to come grab me because I had peanut butter and jelly on my shirt today. I'm laughing away. So that's what I was brought up with. And then when you go to the potlatches, I still go to potlatches. We haven't had very many because of that COVID, but recently, but they're starting to ramp up again. And my father
and
passed
so is
in,
and so is COVID.
it's just called the winter flu. Ramped up this time last year too. Those people said.
Yeah,
But
I don't want to interrupt you, but I want to go back to something that you said, being on the beach, digging up the clams and stuff. As a young gentleman, I'm sure you, at that point in time, it scared the hell out of you, right?
yeah,
And
few times it did.
I realize that it's part of your culture, and you've heard about it since you were a child, and warned about the lady in the woods. But excuse me. At some point, after having listened to you so many times tell stories and your demeanor when you talk about being in the presence of these things has a very, yes, you sound like you act cautiously around them, but you don't seem to have that fear. And what a lot of people people who have these encounters and stuff like that, they have a very heavy sense of dread and a very, they're scared shitless, which I imagine I would be too, had I see one walk out in front of me. Where did you get where did the change happen? Where did that turn? Where was that taken? Where you started to look at this as something less to be afraid of, like a childhood nightmare, and more of, this is a real legitimate thing and we just need to honor and respect?
I guess the sightings I had with them out in the bush, like when I when I went to bush, and I just didn't do like most people, go to Mountain Equipment Co-op and REI and Cabela's and buy some camo stuff and fancy bear bells and a pack and water bottle with a hose to my mouth. I go and get my commercial fish gear because it keeps me warm and dry on a commercial fish boat in rough weather. I grab that. I have a small pack. I don't bring any food other than coffee and cigarettes and my bush kit and a wool blanket and a 8x8 tarp and some string because I never used a tent until probably early 2000s, and still don't like them. But anyway, go to bush, we just went and lived. We lived like Sasquatches, walk and eat, grab and roll over things, dig, beaches at low tide, constantly eating through the day. And pull your gun up, bang, shoot a bird or a deer or whatever. So living in bush, to me, I just lived like a Sasquatch, and I still do when I go out there. And while you're out there, when I used to go out with my cousin when he was alive, um, we wouldn't have fire because we didn't want fire, because on the bush, when the sun's going down, you go to sleep because you don't want to be sitting up talking and go have 20 Ps before you go turn in to sleep because you're going to keep turning your flashlight on. Then all of a sudden, while you're a month and a half, 2 months in bush, and a bear's coming in at night while you're sleeping, and you really need that flashlight, and the batteries are dead. Well, that's not too smart of a bushman. You're being stupid. So as soon as it's going to be dark, go to sleep. If you do wake up, you got a good flashlight in case you need it. And if you do wake up in the middle of the night, there's a reason why you should be awake. Something's coming near.
Yeah.
So shove those two wet fingers up your nose, get those hairs wet, just like a wolf and a bear and a coyote and a cougar, so you can smell better. And then and all of a sudden you'll hear click, 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 downwind from you. So you know darn well that you're the one being smelled. And that's when yo, Wixas, Chunacha, Wigilas, Chunacha. Hello, Sasquatch, how you doing? I don't know who you are. What are you up to? And every now and then you'd hear, and then they'd move off because you bingoed him. You woke up.
Yeah.
He did something wrong. He made a snap or a smell to me. I woke up. Now I've all of a sudden turned my flashlight on. I'm not disrespectfully looking for his eyes back then. Now I am because I'm an investigator. I want to film him. But, back then it was, just go back to sleep. And next morning I go, you wake up last night when I was talking to the big fella? Yeah, I heard you. I was just sitting there going, oh, I hope that big fella just turns and goes away. I don't want to get up. Too cold. So that was bush to us. And then, being in that close interaction with them because you didn't have fire because you didn't want to smell like smoke. You smell like smoke, you're never going to get an animal. If they're downwind from you, they're going to smell you and take off, whether it be bird or ungulate or bear or whatever. And then when I saw the two from my commercial fish boat with the spotlight and with my girlfriend and two crewmen, and I saw how big that male was, just boom, big shoulders I got, and just massive, and the legs and everything. Just patty, basically, what I saw without the big breasts on the male, anyway. And and there right behind him is the trailer that I dragged up the beach in late '89, and the 10x10 edition I built on it. And the next year, I think it was the following year, 2 years later, the commercial fishing industry collapsed. No fisheries. I had to make money, so I went to my abandoned native village. That's why the trailer and addition was there because we were native watchmen for 2 years. And now I need to make money, but I know I can go to the abandoned native village when I should be fishing salmon in summer and there's none. Well, now I can do native cultural tours through the fallen totem poles, big house beam pillars and everything, and make some serious money and have my livelihood. But now I find myself living in that trailer all by myself. And I remember putting the fiberglass window covers down and 2x4s against it, thinking about big hairy arm. I'm lying in my bed, and this is towards the end of my season in end of September, Indian summer. And I'm out there and I'm reading a novel. I always remember what novel too. It was that Louis L'Amour cowboy guy, and I'm reading that book under candlelight. It's really getting interesting, and all of a sudden I hear up the channel called native anchorage is Village Island I'm on, and then Turner Island, and at low tide they're joined because that channel dries up, and it may be only, I guess, 80 yards wide, the narrowest part where it dries up.
Yeah.
Well, up that channel, I hear, and I'm like, that's not a wolf, that's not a bear, that's not humans. And then all of a sudden, I hear over on Harbledown Island across the channel, about 3/4 of a mile away, answering. And then this goes back and forth for a bit. And I'm listening to the deer eating plums in the two plum trees behind my trailer because it used to be a homestead back in the early 1900s. And all of a sudden, I hear the one up native anchorage on Turner Island yell again, but a little closer and louder. And I'm like, ooh, that's no good. Then all of a sudden, what I thought was deer answers back. I lift off that bed probably 4 feet. I grab my gun and I'm like, geez, what am I going to do? Big hairy arms are going to come through that, what used to be a window. It's a sheet of plywood now, 2 foot by 2 foot at my feet. And I'm just like, heart's pounding, legs is shaking, throat's getting dry. I'm just like, you hear my heart just boom, 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 boom. I'm just scared. And all of a sudden, that Sasquatches keep ants howling, and then the one behind the trailer again. Just lifts your hair and everything. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what am I going to do? all by myself. I'm not going to shoot it unless I have to. And I'm like, okay, you got to man up here. Suck it up, Buttercup. So I bang the side of that trailer by my bed. Hey, Judith, can you hear here? All of a sudden, you hear this as it disappears. And I never heard him howl again. Respect. And that's where I learned not to be terrified of them. I'm still afraid of them. Don't get me wrong.
Sure.
It's a
Yeah.
humbling, scary, bloody experience when you're eyeball to eyeball with a Sasquatch at 10 feet. And I've been there. And even when you're looking at them with your spotting scope from your rifle or your Bushnell scope, and you can see that Sasquatch sitting there in the bush watching you. And all of a sudden it stands up and you see the tendons and wrinkles and everything. And then if you're standing there like I was at my cabins, my sea kayak camp on Vancouver Island that we now use as a Sasquatch investigation camp. And 2006, we got chased out by 3 or 4 of them. And as I'm getting my 2 crewmen to a dinghy, and I'm telling them, I didn't have to tell my sister, she was doing like Jesus Christ, trying to walk on water, trying to get to the dinghy at high tide mark. And my dog was already in the dinghy, my big tough bush dog. And you're no, it's Sasquatches. They just shook 2 trees that look like they come out of a swoop movie. They're just vibrating and shaking so fast, and then it pushed a boulder the size of a smart car down the bank and rolled into my camp by my cookhouse. Now I'm getting my crew out of here, and then I'm like ready to leave, but I'm also doing what I'm supposed to be doing as a bushman. Sucker up, Buttercup. This
Yeah.
is your turf. Look around. What is the perceived threat? And I look behind my cookhouse, and not 40, 50 feet from me, there's a big Sasquatch in a V of cedar trees looking at me. And when I eye lock him, he just goes like that to me. And I'm just like, okay, I'm out of here. Get in the dinghy and get the hell out of there and come back the next day. And I lit that place up with 2 buddies with shotguns and rifles. And I was drinking a gallon of water as we're driving up the logging road into my camp because we were there with my crew boat the night before. And peeing all over the place. Then this is my place. This is mine now, not your bay. You stay the hell out of my area where I pee. And ever since then, I've been at peace with the Sasquatches in my little piece of paradise, I call it, because we live in harmony and balance together as we should.
So they're still there. They didn't bug out because of your display, but
Oh
they at
no, we've
least
been investigating them. Yeah, we have a year-round homesteaders there. It's a swimming zone from Vancouver Island to the mainland across channel from us, and it's one of the narrowest gaps in that area without big tide rips and whirlpools and big standing waves when the tide and wind are going against each other. That's why my kayak camp's there. It's a it's a above the wind area and tide rips.
yeah.
And beautiful spot. And right across from me there's the high peninsula mountain, probably say 3,500 feet high, but it has a saddle right across from my camp. And that saddle is easy to go from one side of the peninsula to the other side. And when you go to the other side of the saddle is Boogie Bay. It's all cockles and a lot of Sasquatch reports out of there. That's where we're going in January. We're going to go anchor out there at night when the low tide comes with FLIRs and parabolic listing devices. Hopefully we'll bingo a Sasquatch or more out on the beaches harvesting the cockles.
Yeah.
They'll come out when the waters just turns from low tide as it starts to flood. And that's when all the clams know the water's coming in. So they wiggle their way back up to the surface area. So they're easy to dig. But for a Sasquatch, they know that clam digger trick too. It's easy for them to find the cockles and clams as they're just beneath the sands. That's why the crazy non-Indians, I watch them all the time on the west coast of Washington State. They're out there with these big tubes, pushing them into the sand and pulling on it. Almost having aneurysms there. It's so hard work, and they pull it
Yeah.
up and dump it, and maybe there'll be a razor clam in there, but they're going down like 4 feet. Be a smart Indian. Wait for that tide to come in and be like a Sasquatch. Wait till those shellfish are right at the surface. You don't need to go through all that strenuous exercise to get your shellfish.
I want to take you back to your description of the Sasquatch when you were so close. First, I'd like to get more in depth as far as the the appearance of the face and everything. But you said something that was it was very much like Patty without the breasts. When I first saw the photograph of Patty in a book when I was in grade school, and then shortly after that, I saw the pretty much the full film footage on In Search Of. I think it was maybe 1977, so I'd have been 12. There has never been a time that I've watched that video, whether it was when it was all real shaky or even now that it's been where they've been able to eliminate the shake and isolate it and make it nice and crisp and clear, to the most recent version where Jeff Meldrum and there were two other guys, I forget their names off the top of my head, but one of them took the original, I think they took 26 different video versions of that film, and they fed it into an AI program where it was able to enhance and replace things that were missing. And it is such a clear video of it now that you can actually, and this was one of the arguments that my son made with me, is like, you never see her like foot bend or flex, but in the newest, after they ran it through the AI and everything, you can actually see the toes on the right leg flip up as it's getting ready to take its next step. It is never, ever, not one time, looked to me like somebody in a suit. It has always been very organic in the way that it moved. It didn't look clunky. It didn't look like somebody was struggling to try to move, looking out through eye holes of a mask. There's never been anything about it that has struck me as being not genuine. I know there's stories about Gimlin and Patterson, and that's what they were looking for. And I know the stuff about Hieronymus and all that stuff.
We're getting into dead horse stuff.
Yeah.
You know that saying? You're beating a dead horse. Number one, respect. So respect. We all must respect our elders. Bob Gimlin's still alive.
Absolutely.
No one should be scrutinizing or criticizing anything to do with that Patty film.
Absolutely.
Roger Patterson's dead, 6 feet under. We respect our ancestors that have passed on. So, and then humans that criticize the Patty film are very disrespectful, hairless, bipedal creatures, as far as I'm concerned, because they haven't come to these people, the Indians, and showing us the pictures and the video that we've all seen, like guys like us that are Sasquatchologists, and ask that Indian elder living in the middle of Timbuk flipping nowhere up some trail, or the only way to get in was by a float plane or an ice road, and with an English translator to their language, asking them, is that a real Naga, Sitonga, Chonacha, Hawakwas, books, whatever the name from that tribe is. And that old elder with no teeth looks up and goes, that's the real deal. See,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. So everyone does all this. And then AI is like DNA. There's going to be some capital D, small r period before his name in videography and film and digitizing. It's going to come forth 10 years from now and tell us that everything that was AI back in 2023 was bunch of bunk and BS.
Right.
Just like they did with Melba Ketchum, and they all attacked her over her DNA stuff. And 10 years from now, whoever says the DNA is this nowadays, they're going to get attacked in a decade from now. We're hairless bipedal creatures. We're the dumbest creature on this planet, and we're nothing but poo-tossing apes. So that's why don't take it much. Basically, don't waste your time scrutinizing Patty. It's the Sasquatch. It's the real thing. So is more than likely is Independence Day female Sasquatch bending down, picking up her baby. And the one where the families looks like they're sleigh riding, and you see that Sasquatch is running up on the hill crest.
Yeah.
That looks really real because of the length of the arms and just their gait and everything. The other one where the family's shooting, and there's a helicopter flying
Yeah,
around, and all of a
and
sudden you see
off
the
on the
Sasquatch run
yeah.
from left to right. To me, everything about that one's the real deal. Freeman footage, to me, the hair is too synthetic. It's too much. Looks like it came from a costume shop, because when you go to the bush, back when I used to have hair, and you haven't showered for 10 days to 6 weeks, well, your hair, you can go like that and look at your hands just covered in grease, human oil. And that's what hikers, campers look like when they come out of the bush after a week, because they haven't showered and everything. But then that's indicative of when we look at a orangutan in National Geographic, a chimpanzee, a lemur, a mountain gorilla. So why is it that the apes that we see in National Geographic, and just like us, when we live like an ape, we get oily hair. But then you see um, the what do you call it? The Muppet of what's his name from Alberta? I won't say his name out of respect,
Yes.
but his blackface, and the other one that he did, the real Muppet, the one, and then you look at Freeman footage, and you look at a few others, really synthetically unoily hair. So what I teach people about investigating Sasquatch is, number one, I teach you how to get a close encounter of the hairy kind. That's what I want you to do, so we can get conclusive proof of Sasquatch. So I'm teaching people all of this through SasquatchIsland.com. Definitely check out the website. We just revamped it this week. My wife's been busting her butt out there. And Sasquatch Island on Facebook. People go, Tom, write a book. I have. It's all the posts that I put in Sasquatch Island on Facebook. Go read them. And if you really want to be entertained, go take a bathroom break, grab yourself a beverage, sit down, and go to YouTube, Sasquatch Island. And I'm going to bring you through British Columbia's coast as a commercial fisherman and tell you places where Sasquatch encounters took place. You're going to see where the two Sasquatches were swimming just north of Butedale on British Columbia's coast, that John Green documented it in his Sasquatch book back in the 70s. So I'm this, you'll read it in the website. I was actually doing my bio today, puffing air up my back end and making my head bigger and my ego inflame. But that's what a bio is when you write it yourself. But anyway, what it was just to tell people who and what Tom Sewid is. Why does he have this experience and knowledge? Well, number one, like you said earlier, I don't stammer, stutter, or go when I talk. I can narrate. Well, that's not just by picking up a book or watching a YouTube channel. That's from 1989 being placed in my abandoned native village on Village Island, Mamalelakula, village of Last Potlatch, to be the native guardian watchman. Well, all these people were coming in sea kayaks and yachts and their tender boats and sailboat tenders. And they were asking me, what's that? And I'm like, it's a big house remains, Gyuksi, we call it. Oh, what does this totem pole mean? We don't call them totem poles. That's a memorial pole. Emily Carr painted it. Oh, who are the people that lived here? Isn't this Mamalelakula village last potlatch? And then all of a sudden evolved to be, no, there's never been a village known as Mamalelakula village of last potlatch, nor will there ever be. Mamalelakula comes from some pompous government official back in the colonial age who didn't take the time to spell or pronounce Mamilaka, our tribal name. And as far as village of last potlatch, sit down and let me share with you in a stream of conscious narrative, because I took some writing lessons, how we overcame the persecution, the prosecution, so that as a tribe of Native people in North America, that Indians call Turtle Island, which Tom Sewid calls Sasquatch Island, because we all have stories from every tribe and everyone who lives in every state and province and territory about the large hair-covered bipedal creatures we share our homelands with, whether it be indigenous for 10,000 years plus or the newcomers from 500 years ago to present and beyond. So I learned how to speak by doing those walking tours to that abandoned native village. I remember it was, people giving me input. Tom, don't smoke your cigarettes when you're standing there talking to my guests. Tom, don't flick your cigarette butts. We brought you a coffee can with a lid. Tom, don't use the F bomb when you talk, because you're my guests. And that was Wes Germer.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
told me his guests are pretty PO'd that I was F bombing all over. But I'm a bushman. I'm rough and rugged around my edges. And that's why when you go to my website that we've revamped, you'll find that just reading it for the probably hour it's going to take you to go through and watch the videos and look at my art, click the pictures of the bowls, and you'll see them spin on a video on a pedestal and me narrating what that design and crest is all about. So that's where I learned to speak, and that's what my job and role is in Sasquatchology, the Sasquatch industry, is to pass on all of my experiences, knowledge, so that you can get out there and get that conclusive proof.
And we thank you for that. Um, just touching for a minute on your art. I'm somewhat of an artist myself. I have been the majority of my life since my early teens, and I'm struck by your style. It is. There's a modern flair to it, yet it is very indicative of your heritage and just some beautiful stuff. I wanted to talk to you after the episode, after we're done recording, because I do want to pick up a couple of items from you. Very, very nice stuff. I need something of yours back here in the studio on my shelves.
Thanks.
So I want to touch on a couple of things that I've heard you talk about in other, whether it be a documentary or different podcasts or whatever. At the fish house, you said something that always kind of stuck with me, and it was about garlic coming up missing. And I think it was on the outside of the kitchen house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead. If you would tell that story, because I have something that is pretty interesting about one of the episodes I did previously.
So in Pacific Northwest coastal area, we have 3 indigenous, I guess you could say, types of garlic, or garlic, but different strains of them. Um, and so garlic is known to have medicinal properties. And so Sasquatch is known to the Omaha tribe that I've spent a lot of time with, known as Sitonga, keepers of the medicine, is what translates the name of Sasquatch to them in Omaha, Nebraska, or Macy, Nebraska area on the reserve. But we know that the shamans would disappear for months, sometimes years at a time, and sometimes never return from the Indian villages all through Sasquatch Island, North America. Well, they were out there interacting with the Sasquatches, learning the medicinal plants and remedies. Garlic would have been one of them. And I did a little bit of studying, especially when I went to Omaha and Ohio, that there's garlics out there too. I just didn't find any while I was there. I wanted to. But anyway, the Sasquatches on Compton Island, it's called. It's a 250-acre Indian Reserve island of ours. And I've used it since 89 onwards for sea kayak camps and so forth. But in 2012, I was hired by my chief and council to go there for the tribe and clear the bushes. And we lived in basically under a tarp for that entire summer of 2012, I believe it was. And then 2013 in the spring in Vancouver Island, we built 5 cabins, prefab, beautiful cabins. You'll see a picture of one with the big, what you said, the fish house. It's actually an orca, killer whale design I painted on it. You'll see it in the website, sasquatchisland.com. But we're putting those 5 cabins up, and they were all up, and the carpenter, a big non-native guy, was helping us from time to time. But the 3 of us native tribe members, we were living out there, and at that time it was just the 3 of us on the island, and I guess it was around the end of September. And I'm telling the crew, look, we're sitting here until whenever this carpenter ever gets back running on Indian time, and he's not even Indian, to finish button up these cabins so we can shut down for the winter. But anyway, I said, I've noticed Sasquatches, the Chunachas, come in. There's places when it's northwest downwind from us where they're observing us. There's places here in the southeast where they're downwind from us up in the bluffs over here above our cooking area. We had 3 big spruce trees that we built a bench, had our propane cooker there and all our spices, salt and pepper and that, and a tarp over top and a lockbox. And we were noticing that apples were going missing from the lockbox, garlic was going missing, and I'm giving my 2 crewmen, who aren't 2, cousins of mine, but they're forgetful, and because I'm Bush boss, I'd be barking at them. leaving that goddamn garlic out. The mice keep getting them. And then John is like, no, I watched the mouse. It was eating all the crumbs and it went up to the garlic and it smelled it and it turned and it ran away. They don't like eating garlic, Tom. Something else is taking the garlic. And that's when I'm like, I bet you that sons of bitches are calling in here. And I started looking behind the cookhouse area and you see through the bushes like tunnels. Those Sasquatches are on their hands and knees, or a Sasquatch, and they're pilfering my apples and my garlic. So we put a garlic clove under a clear glass upside down on the cook table. And between the cabins, we put a wood stove and a picnic table, and we screwed windows with frames against the edges of both cookhouses to break the wind. So we could sit outside and smoke cigarettes. We were opening a tourist operation. We didn't want to have smoke smell in our cabin. So we play cards out there, drink pop, smoke cigarettes with the wood stove burning, keeping us warm between the cabins and under the pitched roofs or the overhanging roofs. And John, we left the garlic and we all sat down. It wasn't half an hour, and John's like, "Hey, I'm gonna grab a Pepsi. Anyone else want one?" And I'm like, "Yeah, grab me a Pepsi." And he comes running back. The garlic's gone from under the cup. We knew he couldn't have done it. That's how quick he was. So we
Yeah.
ran over, and sure enough, I went and stupidly grabbed that cup. And yeah, there's no garlic under it, even though he could see through it. I should have done like they do on TV and put it in a Ziploc bag and brought it to the
Yeah.
police in Alert Bay and got them to fingerprint it. Would have been
Fingerprint.
neat. See a big thumbprint or whatever, but we didn't. But then we knew it was the Sasquatches that were doing it. And then eventually we would see them. But yeah, garlic, I've tried it gifting at my Sasquatch investigation camp away from there on Vancouver Island. And that clan, they're not interested in garlic, but they sure like frosted flakes.
Well, I wanted to tell you, one of my earlier episodes, I talked to a gentleman who was in, you would consider it to be lower and kind of southeast Michigan. And he was living on a piece of property that his parents had owned for several years. He took it over, and he was convinced that he had anywhere from 2 to 4 on that property that were pretty regular as far as making the rounds through that property. And he lived very, very near a kind of a Y in the river that went there. And during the spring or summer months, I don't remember, he went out and he would take his lawn tractor and he would mow down all the tall grass in this area. And there was a patch of wild garlic that would grow. And when he drove over it, he said, for the next couple of days, you could smell the garlic from cutting it with the mower. And he said every year, every time he did that, it sounded like he maybe only mowed it once or twice a season. In that area, all of that garlic that had been cut had been gathered up and taken away. And
oh yeah, that's them.
Yeah. He also was the first person, like so many times you hear about the trackways being almost in a straight line. Whether like when we walk kind of, if you were to lay a 2x4, we would walk on either side of the 2x4 where they seem to walk straight in 1 foot straight in front of the other. And it was he who said, because I asked him if he ever saw any juveniles or babies, because he was convinced that he had, a family unit. And he said, not until they got, to what you would probably imagine to be a teenager. And I said, what do you think that is? I mean, do they just keep them that close to the vest? Do they hide them? Or he's like, no, they're in the trees. And I was like, really? And he said, I think that's why their footsteps are always in a straight line. He said muscle memory would dictate if you're walking on branches and basically doing a tightrope walk across branches as a juvenile, and you did that for several years, that muscle memory, when you did eventually come down to the ground and spend more time there, that your way of walking would be similar, and it would be one foot in front of the other rather than kind of side by side. And I was kind of floored by that, because I didn't, I mean, this guy actually put a lot of thought behind the idea of why the prints would be that way. And I'm curious, throughout your years of being in the field and investigating and your experiences that you've had, have you run into them being arboreal up in the tree?
I always tell people, look up, because we have numerous reports in the British Columbia coast region of them going up into the trees. Not so much in most areas where humans are, because that's all regen, second growth, or even third growth pecker poles, So 1,000-pound Sasquatch ain't gonna go scurry up a hemlock tree that big in diameter.
Yeah.
But when you get into old growth, where I spent years, up in the alpines and everything, that's where you get bigger trees, and that's my buddy and I. He has some good substantial trees in one of the areas where he lived on Vancouver Island. And he tells me that you could hear them sliding down or shimmying up when they're going up those trees that wider than 2 men, 3 men almost. So yeah, look up definitely. But as far as the foot tracks go and everything, tweaked me. I'm like, hey, maybe someone's gonna have, because we do videography. We're producing a documentary, and have been for quite a few years, but we'll get it done. But anyway, I'm gonna have to, when it snows here in the Pacific Northwest, I'm gonna have to get Peggy to film my walking gait, which just looks like the Sasquatch tracks I see in a family of 4 up at the head of an inlet in the middle of Timbuk nowhere, Knights Inlet. No people up there other than a logging camp on the other side of the river, and they weren't where I was to my uncle. And we saw the tracks, and they were just human ones side by side. And the juvenile one, was sort of like a typical toddler, teenager, waddling. And the teenager one, aloof. You see at one point it went over and picked some leaves off a tree, and it came back to its side of its father and kept going. But then filming me when I hunt, I do that like a Sasquatch, 1 foot, 2x4, what you said. Because the reason why, what you're doing is you're rolling the ball of your foot down to your toes. That way you don't make that crack. Your smooth gait. And takes a long time to practice, bush rolling, we call it, and bush dancing. But that's how you walk when you're out there with your gun, looking around. You're rolling your feet. You're not looking at your feet. You look up where the next dozen steps are going to go, and know where you got to lift it high over a fallen tree or something. It's 5 inches in diameter. But what I track the ones other investigators don't even have a flipping clue about. That's the rock, log, hopping, tree swinging bugger, not leaving me any tracks. And right behind my cabin, when I go in there and track, you'll see where they've stepped on the rocks with moss and the logs, and they deliberately are making it so there's no trackways. Every now and then there's a track where they can't get away with it. It's duff in the forest duff, but I can look at rocks and logs and see the moss still springing back. 4, 5, 6 hours after that Sasquatch went through. And I've noticed that with Sasquatches when I go in to investigate. In Someone says, "Oh, I saw a Sasquatch. It was over here and it walked into the bush right there into the forest." So as a tracker, I go in, and where it was walking along the edge of the forest, and you see very, very hard to see depressions, odd one here and there. But you'll notice on the rocks and the logs where they're doing that like a rock hopper penguin, concealing their tracks. You can see that. And then you go into the bush, and for the first 40 to 60 yards, very hard to find any evidence of tracks. Then all of a sudden, just like neon, ping, 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 ping. Oh, look, there's 3 Sasquatches were in this clan group that they saw 2 of. There was actually 3. There was another one here. And because once they know that they're not probably going to have that perceived threat come and track them, now they sort of relax. Now they just put their feet in footfalls, and then they'll see that it's not always that 2x4 stepping. The 2x4 stepping, I find, is indicative of in my area only, running Sasquatches or ones that are, just trying to be a little bit stealthy to not leave too much trackway. And, I've even seen grizzly bears, walk down a log, walk into the grass 5 feet high, and then all of a sudden look over his shoulder and backtrack, putting his paws in the same depressions, backs his big fat ass on top of that tree he just jumped off, walks down the tree, gingerly steps off to the side and sits there in the bushes waiting for me because he could smell me.
No shit.
Perceived threat, I'm just going to backtrack. And when that perceived threat comes down this log or by the end of that log in the grass, I'm going to pop out like a grizzly bear does and tear them up and do the bush code, eat them and poop them out for the next couple days. And every other critter will poop him out as well because he's a perceived threat. That's the bush code. But here I witnessed the grizzly bear being playing bush chess with me and doing a queen move. That was amazing. And I'm sitting there going, oh, I could just pop your head like a melon right now, but it's a good day for you not to die. You deserve to live. Adios there,
He
big
impressed
grizzly. I'm
you.
going back.
He impressed you. It's interesting.
Yeah.
The what you were talking about as far as them walking on the sides of their foots and in that interim period where they think there may be a perceived threat before they relax and go back to a normal walking. You're not the first person I've heard talk about that. And I don't know if you're familiar with Robert Kreider out of New Mexico. He was actually the lead speaker I had at Bigfoot and Brews this past September. And he and I had a really good conversation about it. And he's become very accustomed to tracking them because he said there will be times where they will walk on the sides of their foot, or they'll walk on the insides of their foot, or they will walk on all fours, and they will use the side of their hands where you're just getting the side print of the hands to help stabilize them as they're moving through low growing growth. So it's interesting that you're saying is the same thing that he's coming up with, that, you will come across these tracks and they will be full on normal steps, but for whatever reason, there are times, and it may be because they may feel that there's a perceived threat, that they are altering the way that they are leaving an impression in the ground.
Oh, absolutely. And the other thing is the Sasquatch clan, like you said earlier, you don't see the infants. Is it because they're holding them or riding on their back, things like that. Yeah, exactly why you don't see them. Because the Sasquatches, I believe, are just another form of human. That's why the DNA keeps coming up, contaminated by human chromosomes, looks like DNA of human in it, and yada yada yada. It's human. It's just bigger, hairier, and evolved with nocturnal vision, and still retains its ability to scent gland and gag you with its BO sacs. So to me, looking at Sasquatch as the superior human, I don't look at them in an inferior way like 99.9% of the people do. They're like, oh, do you think Patty was an ape? Or do you think she has some intelligence? Do you think she has language? Hell, they got language, they got culture, they got religion to a certain spirituality, and they have laws, very strict laws, which I learned from the Omaha and other Indian tribes. And they taught me some of these North American Indians and Canadian First Nations who don't want to get in front of TVs and, don't even want to help out identifying or Sasquatch with the non-Indians. But with me, because I have that quasi Sasquatch celebrity-ness now, oh gee, I talk to you, Tom. Here, I'm going to teach you something about Naga, the Sasquatch in Northwest Territory. And what I'm finding from the Northwest Territories to Omaha Indian Reserve to other states and provinces in Western Canada, and is the Sasquatch's clan unit functions like an atom. In the nucleus are your mothers with the young babies, the sick, the young, the elderly, and outside of them are the scouts. And outside of the scouts are your harvesters and hunters. And that whole unit, as they look at a knoll during the daytime, humans in the night is a Sasquatch. So in the nighttime, they're going to go up a knoll where they can sleep on top of the knoll. Around the knoll are your scouts. Beneath And we all know that sound is heard better by going uphill than being on top of a hill yelling down into the field. It's the guys in the field don't even have to yell. They're just like, "Hey, how you doing up there, Tom?" I can hear them because that
Yeah.
way sound travels. But for me, I have to yell at them in the field, "Hey, yeah, yeah," and so forth. Or let's pick up my cell phone and text them. But anyway, the Sasquatchers on those knolls. And if all of a sudden a hunter or a scout down below the knoll outside doing their business of scouting or harvesting hunting, tree smack, mimic of a raven or an owl or a coyote, frog even, and all of a sudden the Morse code goes up the hill, everyone's awake, and all of a sudden the warning, get the hell out of there. Well, just like Morse code, they probably got told to go north, south, east, or west, or one of the compass directions in betweens, because a knoll gives them 360-degree hearing, 360-degree sight, 360-degree smell, but 360-degree escape route. Get away from the perceived threat, more than likely a human.
Yeah.
So, because if it's a hunter down below, and or a scout and they see pigs or deer or elk, are those threats? No, that's food. They're going to probably capitalize on that through the mimicking and Morse code that we don't know about. And then because I would learn from the Omaha person I work with, tribe member, they're up in the trees scouting once, and they're can hand gesture, body posture to each other, communicating around that where that unit that they're protecting is. And then the other thing with those Sasquatches, once they move, like that atom nucleus with the electrons and protons, they move in that. And that's a military strategic type of maneuvering. And that's why your buddy who's a tracker, he's got to look at the Sasquatches in that level. Once when we go out, one of the places we investigate, well, we were in a minivan in the back seat and we're all hunched down like that. And we drove up the road and turned around, drove back out. Sasquatches that were scouts looking, all they saw was a female sitting in the front of the minivan. Couldn't see through the dark windows in the back. But the minivan goes to the end of the road, turns around, comes back now. They see the female in there. And as it goes around the corner, and it's high berms on either side, we opened the door and bailed out. Minivan kept going. We could see it go way down the road and disappear. And we sat there quietly for 20 minutes. And then we spider crawling as fast, best we could and as quiet as we could. And we started doing our thing. And then after 3 hours of doing our investigating, we bingoed a Sasquatch where we got to see the back of it. He's sitting there doing his job scouting. And as we got to move in closer, what do you call it? Buddy's water bottle canteen fell and hit a log and it's all it took. Thing just turned its whole body, looked and ping, and it just bang, 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 bouncing like the Russian Yeti down the hill, disappeared into the hardwood. So you can bingo a Sasquatch. You got to play bush chess with them. And that's where you're using fingers up your nose, the better you're smelling. If you don't want to lick it, don't keep repeating the same fingers because you put it up your nose. Use water. Take a little bit of water out and shove it up there. Trust me, it works like a hot damn. That's why grizzly bears always lick their nose trying to identify what that smell is. And then, go
Well,
to
most
Sasquatch Island.
animals do. Most
Yeah.
animals do that. My dog does that.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he's licking his nose, getting it wet, and you can see him, when I'm cooking something in the kitchen or whatever outside.
Well, you know why dogs lick their testicles, eh?
Because they can.
Yeah, lucky buggers.
So I've heard you refer to these as feral humans, and I think it's
Feral
safe
humans,
to say that
because I was a feral human twice. I had IRS Canada $170 something thousand bill sent to me in the late '80s, and girlfriend I caught in the driveway in my best friend's vehicle bumping uglies, and the whole world went sideways, and I was square peg trying to fit in a round hole, and I just said, hell with this, I'm getting away from these stupid humans. I can't stand them. I hate them right now. So I went into the bush and did my work out there, watch logging camps in the wintertime, ecotourism during when I wasn't commercial fishing. See, being on a commercial fish boat to me that's bush as well. And when I disappeared to bush, I was fishing all over the place and living out in the bush and doing my thing, doing shake and shingle blocks for the cedar shingle and shake roof industry. You go out and harvest it with chainsaws up the side hills and fly it out with helicopters and big slings onto barges. But you live out there, and doing all that, in the bush I just loved. And then I came out, and then because I met a girl and she became the mother of my two children. And we had a white picket fence, and we had a $200,000 aluminum tour boat, $67,000 sea kayak fleet. We had money stacked up in stacks in the two banks in Campbell River on Vancouver Island. I had $30,000 credit in each one of my credit cards. I'd rack them up $30,000 and pay them down by the end of the month because we were making that much money. I was high on the hog. And when I went to Mexico, and I got back from Mexico after 2 weeks, there was a fax on the floor. It just said, "You've been sued, found liable for defamation of character and slander, and you court has awarded people that sued you, two kayak companies, $260,000." I'm just like, what? What do you mean? I just got sued for 260,000? So I fought it, and they dropped the charges because I wasn't legally properly informed about this court case. Actually, they failed to not to tell me. So they threw the charges away. Those two buggers went downstairs, refiled in the court that day, took me back to court a few months later, and I got found liable for $600,000 and lost everything. And moved to Queen Charlotte Islands, Haida with my mother and my children, my common law wife at the time. And 8 months later, she pointed to the door and told this Indian to get the beep out. We Indians fear two things: police take our parents, and social workers take our children. I had been just thrown out of a house by a non-Indian social worker, and my two Indian children, because they have status cards, I would never see live under my roof again. And that came true. They're, 19 and 22, and they've never lived under my roof after their mother pushed them out. They'd come visit once in a while. That was it. So when that happened to me in March 27th, 2008, when I returned to Vancouver Island with my life's possessions in my vehicle and my rifles and shotguns and fishing gear and bush kit, all my possessions in my Jeep Cherokee, I pulled into Campbell River and I was rogue Sasquatch. I was wanting to go and do terrible things to those two guys that just ruined me. And I would have got away with it too because I'm a good bushman. But anyway, I'll say no more. I'll plead the fifth. But anyway, I didn't do anything because I saw a sign in Campbell River that said on a hotel, "Success is not defined in how high you reach. It's how high you bounce when you've hit rock bottom." So I hit rock bottom on that March 27th, 2008. I've been bouncing ever since. And those two gentlemen got to continue their lives. But anyway, I went into the bush again a couple days later after I put everything in storage, bought my half a dozen cartons of cigarettes and a bunch of coffee cans full of coffee grounds. I went back into the bush, but my billionaire friend took me in at his resort, and I became his maintenance worker living out in my traditional territories and bush. And I snapped. I went rogue Sasquatch again, and like I did decade and a half before, and I just went into bush and I lived. And when you're out there, you have a whole different mindset. You look at humans like that painting right there of that Sasquatch pulling the branch down. You look at humans, you study them, smell them, let the branch up, turn and walk away because you don't want anything to do with those hairless, bipedal, filthy, concrete contaminated humans. I know what it's like how Sasquatches think. I've got the same mindset as them when I get into the bush and snap and go rogue. Right now, I'm living in Kent, Washington with Peggy because of COVID. I got rid of my rental place in Vancouver Island. Older now, she taught me a valuable lesson in life: learn to make money while you sleep. And that's why the website, she put such a hard effort into it this last week, and me doing all the blueprinting and all the pictures and everything, because people can order and then next morning I read the email, make them their art piece, send it to them. So make money while you sleep. Plus,
Sure.
I'm getting older. I'm writing my book now and books and doing more podcasts and everything. It's my turn to give back and my turn to do what I just wrote called the Chance Encounters and Investigating of Sasquatch guidelines. They're just recommendations, and I have it available. I'm sending it out to people, but also looking at that along with a bunch of other stuff I wrote, almost 140 pages now, was a book that I'm trying to get published in the new year, just be able to make money while you sleep, advertise it on my website and social media, and sell it. And it's going to be a book you can read and go, holy smokes, all these other Sasquatch books I got on the bookshelf, all bunk job, bunk and BS, half of them, but Tom's is the real deal. Just kidding, all you authors out there, you're all my friends anyway.
So, as far as like kind of keeping in the same realm as like the guidelines that you're talking about, it's curious because I've had an opportunity to have a conversation with Jeff Meldrum. Very nice guy. Respect the hell out of him for what he has done for the science of Sasquatch. But I find it kind of odd that he has a tendency to refute anything over an 18-inch footprint. And the gentleman that I spoke to you about just a little while ago, down in New Mexico, I saw a print that he had brought with him to Bigfoot and Brews that was, I believe it was just a hair shy of 23. It was a big dude. I don't understand why, because it seems like the people that are in this topic that tend to lean heavily on science, and there's a few of them, seem to try to get across that, one, they're apes, two, that they're pretty much a maximum of 8 foot at very most. And that a 18-inch print, anything beyond that is highly suspect and very unlikely. With your experience, with your knowledge of other people's experiences, does that seem to hold water with you, or is that kind of a misnomer?
Well, Jeff, number one, he's a friend of mine, and Sasquatchology associate. We're on the Alaska Bigfoot cruise together in September. Sure. When he got sick.
Yeah.
But no
thankfully he's
disrespect
doing
to him
better.
and his science, but he's never been out in bush and done what I've done. I was at Safari Club International when I was a grizzly bear hunting guide, selling trips with the company I worked with, and I was standing there looking at the world record grizzly bear at the time, and I kept looking at the tracks, and I finally got a tape measure, and I'm measuring it, and all of a sudden the guide came over from Alaska. He goes, well, I can just tell you how big the track is. And I was like, 16 inches. He's like, yeah. He goes, how big's the one you're tracking? I'm like, 16 3/4, man. Solid. And I call him Freddie because he lives in this drainage called Frederick Creek. So I call him Freddie. He's got a head arm like this, and he's got these big 16 3/4 inch tracks. And he goes, my name's so and so. He said, I'm Tom Sewid. He shook my hand. He goes, hopefully I'm here next year or two, and it'll be yours, Freddie, up there with a 16 3/4. That's a big bloody track. And I said, yeah, it's a big bloody bear. And I've seen bigger grizzly bear tracks, and way in the up the river that was logged 40 plus years before. No one's been up there, but this dumb Indian went up there for 6 days scouting for grizzlies and looking for grizzly skulls and grizzly kills so I can get the penal bones and claws and leg bones to carve shaman pieces. But anyway, as I'm up there, I came across, and I didn't have a tape measure, but I knew it was bigger than Freddie. And I was in Kodiak. I'd seen a Kodiak Island bear and how big its tracks were, and it was huge, like dinner plates. So I've seen Sasquatch tracks. One I measured with cigarette pack, 1 2 3 so far, and then I ripped a piece of the top of the pack to make the size of the track, and I went back and measured it when I got back out of the bush. and that track was 19 and a half Bigfoot track, and it was a trackway. If I'd only had plaster, I wasn't an investigator back then. I was just out doing a took a look, just living out in bush, looking around.
Yeah.
But it was a big Bigfoot track for sure, Sasquatch track. So are they out there? Oh, absolutely. There's some pretty big critters out there. On social media last night, I've been a commercial fisherman 48 years. I've seen a lot of fish, a lot of biggies, seen halibut seen one that was 427 pounds, 7'4". That's a big halibut. I got a picture of it on my computer. My cousin caught it, my cultural advisor. And then this picture last night on social media was what we call Tommy cod, gray cod, Pacific cod. That thing was huge. It was like as big as my desk here. It's got to be almost 5.5 feet long. That's how big this fish was. I'd never seen one that huge. I've seen pink salmon that usually are, average 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds. I seen one that measured out 27 pounds. I got pictures of big slabby pink salmon like that people have caught. I save them because I'm a fisherman. Our arms can only go so far, but it sure backs us up in our stories when we say, "Yeah, I caught a pink salmon that big, like that guy caught in Alaska on this fishing rod." And so nature does its thing, and everything with Sasquatch is based upon nature's code. Everything gets pooped out in the bush. Everything will get toppled as a clan pack leader eventually by a younger, stronger, more dominant male for the genetic strengthening. Sasquatch clans will come together in their rendezvous, powwow, or potlatch, like that famous video of the husband and wife with a night vision video camera sitting in their pontoon boat because their transmission blew on their pickup truck in California or Southern Oregon at nighttime with their two dogs just terrified. And you could hear Sasquatches mass vocalizing. It's like grizzly bears coming, and there's a female grizzly ready in the heat, and three grizzly bears will sit there and posture and rip the ground up and bluff charge each other till eventually one of the three goes, "Okay, I'm scared. I'm going to get my butt kicked here. I'm out of here." Then those two big boys clash, and there's fur and blood and meat, and they're just killing each other until one runs away all beat up. And that big guy, all beat up and frothing and slobbering and hurting, goes over and mounts that female. Bush code. Everything is dictated by nature's code. Ekame, the creator, has his rule book we all adhere to. So with big tracks like that, yes, it's quite possible there is the 21 to 23-inch tracks out there. I've heard about them as well. Do I think Sasquatch break 10 feet? No. I've heard the stories of 14 and 16 footers, and I'm like, ow, 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 my legs hurt, and they're pulling it so bad.
And this gentleman in New Mexico, he's estimated, just based on that track size, that he'd be somewhere in the 10 to 11 foot range, and that seems incredible.
Yeah.
But so does a 23-inch foot from
Polar
heel to
bears
toe.
get to be over 10 feet tall.
So I mean, I don't know. I think, I respect the hell out of Meldrum, and he's done an awful lot for the cause, but to dismiss anything outside of that range seems to be, if you are going to dismiss it, I would keep that personal. I wouldn't, instead of going public with it and saying that.
But you got to remember, Jeff Meldrum and us other Sasquatch celebrities, we're the leaders of Sasquatchology. We're the captains on our decks. And that's why in Sasquatch Island Facebook group, if you come on and because we're Bigfoot without the BS, so I absolutely don't allow any chatter like a Sasquatch on cloaking, portal jumping, mind speaking, orb turning, flying saucer Sasquatches. I've had many close encounters with Sasquatch where I knew they were there, smell them, hear them, so forth, saw them half dozen times, lived in bush for years, but I've never had any of those, what I call woo-woo experiences. Will I believe in woo-woo? Well, yeah. If all of a sudden I see a Sasquatch run up a ladder or gangway and get into a UFO and zip off, yeah, then I believe in that part of the woo-wooism. If one all of a sudden comes to me and mind speaks with me and we have a communication, and I wake up out of after being in that zone and have a lot of my questions answered, and I'll believe in that part as well. But until then, I can't believe in it. So with Jeff being a scientist and me, I was taught and trained by the late Dr. John Bindernagel from early 1990s till his passing in 2018, I think it was. But anyway, John was a dear friend of mine, and we spent a lot of time investigating and chattering like two Sasquatches about Sasquatches. And we both believed it was a branch of Gigantopithecus blacki in the early 1990s until a couple of years before his death, when I went to him and I said, John, because I've seen them and I've really looked at tracks, you can't say like your book, Sasquatch, North America's Undiscovered Great Ape. Yeah, we're all apes. Even us humans are supposed to be on that ape evolutionary tree, just a different branch. I firmly believe, told John, I said, we all know about evolution. We believe in it, right? And he goes, yeah, unless you're Christian and devout and you believe in creation, but whatever. But with us evolutionary believers, we all know that our late relic humanid ancestor jumped out of a tree and was quadruped, dragging his knuckles eventually walking bipedally and losing its hair and its ridges on its brow, and its jaw came in more to what our jaws are now. But mind you, we can see the odd human, especially the Slavic descent in Asia and Eastern Europe, that have those big jaws, that Neanderthal look. Well,
Yeah.
DNA showing us they got Neanderthal in them, some of
Yeah.
them, apparently. I
A
don't know. I'm
lot
not
of
a
them.
DNA
A lot
specialist.
of them do.
Yeah. So to me, I believe that during that human evolutionary path, I believe the human sat there one day and went, hey, look, sparks. Oh, look, we can do like lightning does when it hits tree. We have fire. Oh, but now I figured it out that we do this to a stick, creates heat like the fire. We now have fire. Oh, put a bow on it and bow drill fire. Oh, now we got fire. Gee, I'm cold. Better start using these skins and hitting rocks and making knives and scrapers and arrows and atoll throwing spears and harpoons and knives. And next thing you know, like the gods must be crazy, all of this modern stuff evolves into the human evolutionary track till all of a sudden some of the Sasquatches, like the gods must be crazy, said, look, everyone in our clan are fighting over the stone tools and implements, and they're creating more religion and they're creating society tiers, and I'm better than you because I have more arrowheads, and I'm better than you because I have rainbow obsidian for a knife instead of just black. And this materialism that's coming is bad. So, honey, I think you and I should do like our ancestors did and get more one on one with nature and walk away from this long house, big house, tule hut, teepee, earth house, and pit house and go live one on one in harmony with what Eke Gekame, the creator, intended us to do, live in harmony and balance with nature like all the other animals. And when those humans did that, they either retained the hair or regrew it back. They got bigger because they were going up mountains and to harvest in the late spring, early summer, and they had to go down the mountain to go harvest the whatever, and then they had to go over this mountain range to go harvest this in this season. And because they were competing with these hairless humans with the weapons and tools and fire and mass, the humans of the day, they were caught in a cockle bed, a shellfish bed, a berry patch, a hunting ground, a fishing zone, and they were attacked with weapons. So those big hairy humanoids said, let's become the humans of the night. And Ikagekame, the creator through evolution, took care of them and gave them nocturnal vision. And that's why Sasquatch eyes reflect. So now, when you look at Sasquatch the way I do, because I study the stories about the Kwakwakiwa with the basket lady and how Tonahua, the male one there, will take those misbehaving children and eat them, how other tribes call the Sasquatches, and translated to English, the cannibal giants, the cannibals from the mountains. So when a bear or a wolf or a cougar or grizzly bear eats a human, it's a human killer. We go kill the animal. We don't call it a cannibal.
Right.
So why is it that the Indians were calling Sasquatches cannibals prior to human European contact and afterwards, and still to this day in some areas with their names translated to English? Because they know what they are. The Sasquatches are the other tribe. They're just a bigger, hairier, nocturnal vision human of the night who retain the ability to expel like a skunk its armpit juices to make you gag because it tells you like broken shells on the beach at high tide piled up, like the smell does when they expel it, or when they shake a tree, or they throw a rock lob towards you. Now you got to remember when they lob rocks at you, they have the ability to throw a rock and pop your head like a tomato. Because what we can do with a 22 single shot iron sight rifle, a Sasquatch can do with a rock. So when you see those tail feathers and wings from birds and their little part of their legs, but there's no other part of the bird, it's because Sasquatch sat there, and I see it in Vancouver Island when I see two dead cellar jays that are blue, and or I see two crow wings because that Sasquatch went and got two birds, ate them, moved on. And so Sasquatches, when they lob a rock at you, that's just them telling you, like everything else I told you, when they tree knock, especially, they're telling you, stop, turn around, go back where you came from. The same thing my relatives taught me when I was a young boy, when I was learning the bush world. When you see broken shells or hear or see this, you turn around and get out of there. When I go clam digging in January, I'll go to the beach in the daytime and I'll leave the main boat with a tender boat and I'll go ashore and I'll look at the high tide mark. If I see any piles of any shellfish, and indentations possibly in the gravel at the high tide mark, I'm going to get back in this dinghy, go back to the boat and go, yeah, Sasquatch is harvesting at this beach. Let's go around the corner. About a mile away, there's another good shellfish beach. I'll go check it again. No broken shells. I'll dig there that night. While I'm digging there that night, the Sasquatch might have just come in that day or the night before and didn't leave broken shells as it hasn't harvested the tide yet at night. But all of a sudden it goes to the beach and all of a sudden it's like, that stupid humans, hairless buggers with their lights, noisy generator, they're down there. Well, let's shake a tree. Let's push a dead one over. That's when I'll take the armload of cockles up. Yo, Weeksas, Chonafa. Hello, how you doing, Sasquatch? I don't know who you are. Here's some trolley. Here's some cockles. Halakasla, go in peace, Chonafa. And I'll turn and walk back down the clam digging. The next morning, if you go look where I threw those cockles, oh, you won't find any. They've
No.
taken them in and eaten them.
I
So
want to
that's how I look at Sasquatch. They're just humans of the night.
go back to a couple of things that you said. You said at points, clans will come together and unite for whatever purpose that is. What do you know about their socialization between themselves, between family units, between clans, whatever the proper terminology is? Is it a, hey, how you guys doing? Let's hang out for a while. We're just passing through. Is it something that is of necessity, that maybe they need, maybe as far as hunting, maybe the area isn't as thick with food as they had anticipated, so they need help and share that? Or is it kind of a begrudging thing that, we ran into each other, we don't necessarily want to be around you, but you are like us, so we'll tolerate? And what do you know as far as the socialization between them?
Number one, Bush code. Everything has to bump uglies. They have to do the deed.
Mm-hmm.
Got to strengthen the genetic pool. Got to make the species even stronger. That's the code. We can't break it. We don't incest because that's breaking the code, and
Right.
we don't do that. So the code dictates that the Sasquatch clans have to amass from mass areas to come into a rendezvous, powwow, potlatch type of scenario. Rendezvous is the old frontier bush mountain men, prospectors, trappers who were in the bush for months, years on end. And now they converge. Well, someone brought a couple buggy loads full of ladies of the night. They could do some trading and go bump some uglies, and whew, that'll do me for another year. It's just what we need to do. But with the Indians having powwow and potlatch, it was to bring us in mass so that we could fornicate have marriages. Oh, I just love that girl that lives in that village 300 miles away, Dad. Can I marry her? Okay, let's arrange the marriage. Now we can pass on our crests and songs and hunting areas. I get to bump a lot of uglies because now I'm married to her. So that's one of the main reasons. The other one is they get together, just like we get together, and whether it be an organization, a club, a Facebook group, a courthouse, municipal governing body with people attending and sending in their submissions, or state level, provincial level, or federally. We converge and say, the Sasquatches say, remember old rogue Sasquatch so and so used to live in this area? Oh yeah, yeah. I remember going to his territory and vocalizing and parlaying with him so I could go through in peace and tell him that I might harvest a little bit, but do I have permission? Because they have laws, very strict laws, because they're like us. And then all of a sudden, the Sasquatch says, "Well, we found him. He was dead, so we went and buried him." So that area, we would like to go and take his territory. Wait a minute. We are on the north side of his territory. We want access to those shellfish beds and those alpine ungulate fawn drop areas above the tree line in the spring and summer, and the salmon river in summer into fall. So how about we two clans split that old dead rogue's territory? All of a sudden, the third clan pops up. Well, I'm just me and my wife and my young one, because I'm a young adolescent Sasquatch, but I got turf edging that too, and I don't have a shellfish beach. So can I take that one shellfish beach? Yeah, okay. They have laws, very strict laws. The people I've talked to that have interacted with Sasquatches, the native people, and I'm sworn to secrecy on some of them, but my buddy on Lucas White, almost Indian Reserve, he's taught me so much. He's always starts out by saying they have laws, Tom, very strict laws. And then he'll tell me stuff. And then he'll end it by saying, Tom, they have laws, very strict laws. Just for an example, he's found those squeaker spinner crib toys for babies when they can
Yeah.
sit up. And found one a mile and a half in the bush in the Indian Reserve. Found a bicycle a couple hundred yards from any road with a training wheel missing. You can just imagine that young juvenile Sasquatch who are coming to the Omaha Indian Reserve for the food that the humans are throwing out. And remember, there's a curfew on the Indian Reserve from 11 o'clock till 7 in the morning. So the Sasquatches see Tonga and the humans don't interact at night. Well, when they come for the food, the humans put out as gifts so they don't get banged on the side of their house and the pictures shake because it's happening there. So anyway, or the Sasquatch is digging through their freezers, which I heard a report of that happening there as well. So they feed them so they can eat at night. Well, you can imagine that young Sasquatch all of a sudden seeing that little crib toy, or that little bigger Sasquatch seeing that bicycle. Next thing you know, he's playing with it. Next thing you know, he's going into the forest because it's getting towards daylight and they got to migrate away from the human area. And as they're doing it, they come across another clan member who's a big male. Now you got to remember, my code of conduct is I don't ever think of 911. I don't ever think of hiring a lawyer to deal with something. I would rather sooner hunt the human down, and when I do meet him, go bushman, commercial fisherman, Indian res on his butt because he disrespected me.
Yeah.
Just don't get caught. But you can imagine that big Sasquatch walking up to that Sasquatch with the tricycle or the bicycle or the crib toy. What's wrong with you? We have laws, very strict laws. That's why we don't take any of the knives and axes from the humans' places where we go get the food. We're not to touch those human items. Human items produce bad, 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 bad. That's why we have these laws. Now let's look at us, because we went like that with bow drills and click rocks for sparks and created flint knapping and made arrowheads, spearheads, harpoon heads, and the list goes on. We would evolve to a point where we live in terror right now at times because we got Biden, Putin, Rocket Man in North Korea, the Pakistanis and the East Indians, the French and the British with fingers over buttons right now, ready to push those buttons and cause
Yeah.
a mass extinction of how many species on this planet. if not a mass fusion, fission, ignition, like Oldenheimer said on his movie the other night, that is a probability if you let off a bunch of nuclear bombs at one time,
Total
we turn
destruction.
Earth into a star. So that's where we are with evolution of materialization, weapons, and tools, and fire. So that's why Sasquatches don't allow the use of fire or tool use, and very rarely clothes use. Yes, there is some cases of clubs in that. I'll go with that. And yes, there is the odd report of a knife being stolen in Anchorage or an axe left out on Vancouver Island by the native watchmen when they closed the gate at the end of hunting season, where they shot elk or deer and left carcasses with sticks in the bellies after they took the entrails out, piled to the side as an offering for the Sasquatches to say, thank you for allowing us, our tribe and others, to hunt here, but now we've left you food, closed the gate. No one will be here until springtime when we reopen it. And we've left an axe out for you guys and some rope. There's a couple cases where the code has been broken on Vancouver Island and elsewhere where I'm interacting with the humans about their Sasquatch activities, and I'm hearing things that are very troubling. And I'm telling them, don't be stupid. Use your frontal lobes. Don't be giving them weapons. Don't be leaving out stuff like peanut butter. If they are, which I think humans, would you just give kids every time you saw a kid, give them a spoonful of peanut butter? No, because there's peanut allergies that kill people. So why would you bring peanut butter out to a probable human species? Because the way I think of Sasquatch, when we do have the conclusive proof of the existence of Sasquatch, now this opens up the conspiracy doors, is we will have the third recognized Indian or indigenous tribe of the United States. You have the Inuit in Alaska in the north, you have the North American Indians. Sasquatch will be your third indigenous tribe. In Canada, we First Nations, the Inuit in the north, the Métis that just got recognition, what you guys call Cherokees, we call them Métis in Canada, and they just got indigenous recognition. And with those 5 indigenous recognized tribes in Sasquatch Island, we cost the taxpayers billions of dollars, free contact lenses, free dental, free. I got a $700 check from my chief and counsel yesterday for my Christmas bonus so I can buy turkeys. And so we Indians are spoiled, rotten children in Canada and the US. We get everything. And does the government want another tribe recognized? We can only think about what happened when the marbled murrelet and the spotted owl were said to be endangered, almost extinct by the
Absolutely. Absolutely.
tofu chewing environmentalists. Hundreds of millions of hectares of resource land, forestry, logging, mining, pipeline, urban expansion were taken off the table by the Canadian and the US governments. Can you imagine what it's like when they identify Sasquatch and with the power that the environmentalist tofu chewers have? They're going to shut down all hunting, all logging roads, all pipeline, petroleum. The list goes on. And it will affect our GOPs in both of our countries when it's Sasquatch is identified. And that's why right now, when I looked at a person's cell phone that was smuggled out, and they showed me a video of a night vision on a helicopter just over the treetops, and the Sasquatch looking up, running with fear and hair and muscle movement. And then it goes right, left, right, and jumps again across a creek, looking at that up at that helicopter, probably 40, 45 feet up. All of a sudden, the screen goes snowy. I looked at it 6 times. I slid the cell phone back to that gentleman, and it was a big iPhone about 5 years ago. And I said, that Sasquatch was machine gunned. That's why it went snowy. He goes, yeah. And that's why we're seeing, as we were talking before the show started, why I study urban edge Sasquatches, especially here in Washington State. I firmly believe that the military is doing what the military did back when Mr. Gatling invented the machine gun. Why did Mr. Gatling invent the Gatling gun? To kill Indians.
Yeah.
That's what it was made for. And why did they create Indian reserves? So they can shove us into this inferior agriculture and ranching areas in this inferior ground and make us go on death marches across countries and give us smallpox contaminated blankets and generate the Gatling gun and make residential schools to eradicate our culture and heritage and ban our ghost dancing and potlatching. They did that in New Zealand. Yeah, in what do you call it? New Zealand, or not New Zealand, Australia. The Australian Aborigine was still considered flora and fauna until 1967.
Right. Yeah.
We Indians weren't classified as Canadian citizens with the right to vote in Canada until 1961. This is stuff that Sasquatch investigators need to understand,
Yeah.
that maybe we better not go out to the middle of Timbuk nowhere and look for Sasquatch, because number one, go to the beaches, go to the lake shores, go to the fields, go to the open areas, the alpines, because Roger Patterson and just a few others were able to get us a bingoed Sasquatch in the yarn basket of North America, Sasquatch Island, the forest. So we Indians tell you, you want to see a Sasquatch, go to a cockle beach at low tide, go to a gravel bar and be elevated and look down at where the salmon riffles are, where the salmon are moving up at night in the shallows like Cowichan River on Vancouver Island. And my buddy walked into a restaurant last month and goes, "Oh, we went to the river the other night fishing, and you know where the riffles are by the bridge." Oh yeah. Sasquatch breaking branches, throwing rocks at us. I'm like, "What'd you do? Did you get the video for me?" He goes, "Oh no, I got scared. Went back home." So you want to see a Sasquatch, be smarter, charter an Indian guide. And that's what I am, Sasquatch Island. You want me to go jump to SeaTac Airport 22 minutes from this front door and jump on a plane, you bought me a round ticket and fly me out to Ohio and bring me into Salt Fork Park again, because I went there for Creature Week in 2017. While everyone was drinking beer the second night, chattering like Sasquatches in the pub. I went up to my room after the event, went to sleep, got a couple hours, and that night I went and staked out the dumpsters behind Salt Fork Park Resort. And sure as enough, just before 1:30 in the morning, something was trying to come out of the bush, but he could smell the two people outside smoking marijuana. And he come out and he went in, came out, went in, then disappeared. Next morning, I went there and looked. Lo and behold, 13.5-inch track. I almost seen a Sasquatch in Salt Fork State Park, and we know that's a hot spot.
We do, and it's funny that you bring that up, because we did not talk about this prior to us recording, but my girlfriend she lives about 5 minutes from Salt Fork. She worked there at Salt Fork for 20 years, and that's where I met her 2 years ago when I went there for the Ohio Bigfoot Conference. And we continue to have a relationship. We have to deal with 5 hours between the two of us at this point. But it's amazing that you would go to that story because it is very much near and dear to my heart. So yeah, that area is rife with reports, and I believe that's where the Ohio Howl was captured. And one of the other interesting things is the gentleman John Hickenbottom is the naturalist there for the state park for Salt Fork. And to my knowledge, up until now, I still believe they are the only ones. The Ohio DNR allowed John to do a 6 or 7 part webinar series online about Bigfoot education. And it is I would say a beginner's guide to a very early medium, intermediate, I guess would be the word for it, as far as the information and stuff that is available that they put out. But I found that to be very strange that the DNR would allow him to put that out on their own website.
See, you're not using your frontal lobes. Do like a Sasquatch. You smell that? I smell money. DNR says we
Exactly.
got Salt Fork Park.
Exactly.
We got to have 3 Sasquatch conferences a year there to try to pay our hydro and our wages and our insurance. Because when it gets cold out there, no one's going to go in that nice swimming pool. No one's going to go in the nice hotel rooms. But if all of a sudden we do like all these guys are doing, these Sasquatch celebrities and authors and podcasters and videocasters and all these documentary shows on TV that we can pay and watch. We're making that guy up in Alberta rich with his bunch of BS show he's got, and others are like that as well. And some of them are really good. But the bottom line is It's a business.
It is.
It's gonna. I was one of the first humans to ever do a boat-based whale watch tour when I was 15 years old with the Zodiac in 1980. That summer, I was doing boat-based grizzly bear tours in coastal British Columbia. First human to ever do that, making money with whales and bears. Who knew? And then the next year, I participated in the first ever paddleless fiberglass kayak with whales. First time ever in North America and the world. Now you look at those industries, they're multi-million dollar industries. In 2019, when did the first ever commercial night tour boat out of Campbell River, which this tour boat worth almost 300 grand is used for whale watching and grizzly bear tours and water taxi and freight work, tied up to the dock in December 19th, 2019, we did the first ever commercial Sasquatch on the beach expedition because he has a built-in $32,000 FLIR unit that looks like R2D2 up on the roof of the screen in the boat. And the clients loved it because it was heated, had a flush toilet, and sandwiches and hot chocolate were served while we're out Sasquatch investigating.
So no ticks.
I'm a visionary. I know, like, after Peggy finally got down to do our website this last week, because I do the blueprinting, and she just busted butt. And she's used to work for Boeing for 35 years. But anyway, you could hear her like a logger out there cussing and swearing. And she'd knock on the studio door here. This page is up. Expeditions page is up. And I check it. And I'm just sitting there thanking her. Like, this website is smoking, Peggy. And it's got our expeditions, my art, our conference page just went up today where you can say Bigfoot and Bruce. We better get Tom out there and we're going to need a bigger venue. So maybe we better talk to the local Indian tribe that Tom said that I should communicate with. And they're going to sponsor Tom and Peggy to come with the masks and the regalia and do the native cultural tunics and everything to do with Sasquatch. And then they're also going to be at Bigfoot and Brews, but you have to pay so much to go see the performance down at the Tribal Casino Resort Conference Center. And at the same time, Bigfoot and Brews is going on or whatever. I'm in this for a business.
Yeah,
and
we need to
come to me.
We very much need to talk about that.
Oh yeah, no, I put my own conferences on. I held BinderCon last November in 2022, a first annual memorial Sasquatch conference for late Dr. John Bindernagel, and filled the house, man. It was great.
I
Even
bet
made
you
a
did.
profit, and I gave the money to his son for his mother who has dementia in a home, and it was my contribution to John Bindernagel family.
Fantastic, that's awesome.
Oh yeah, like I say, do be like a Sasquatch. Smell that? Because I smell money.
Yeah.
And there's some people out there going, how can you commodify Sasquatch? That is so wrong. Oh, come on, give your head a shake. You come to the Pacific Northwest and you'll see masks of the Chonahua, the highest ranked crest of the Kwakwaka'wakw Nation, that when those collectors like Jessup and Swan and others went for the Peabody and New York and Boston, and the list goes on, museums across North America and the world, and went to places like Kwakwaka'wakw territory and other places in the Pacific Northwest and said, we would like to buy that Chonahua mask or that carving or that memorial pole or house post. Right here in Seattle, there's a memorial pole, ridicule pole at the University of Washington Burke Museum of Chonahua holding up a copper shield, but it's made of wood that came from one of our villages, but it's a replica. You can go to Occidental Square and see where an artist was paid probably $80,000 to do a Chonahua welcoming pole 24 feet tall. You can go into the Seattle Art Museum downtown and see two Chonahua house posts with other crests on it that came from one of my tribal villages that a chief said, oh, I want a new Victorian looking house. I'll sell you my old house posts for your museum in Seattle so I can buy lumber and windows and an oil stove. Because my wife can be real happy when she has a regular bed in a nice Victorian house. Okay, we'll buy it. So how can we commodify Sasquatch? Well, we do it with everything. When I hear these pompous on a soapbox, whiny Indians condemn me because I'm commodifying Sasquatch. I'm like, yeah, you got a lot of nerve. You're sitting there in your carving studio carving a Chonahua mask or a Hamat's Humpsumala mask, Humpsum, which is a type of bird, raven, crooked beak of heaven, or the hook that smashes human skulls from Buckbuckwalla Nuxway's realm, but that's a whole different story. But anyway, they're very sacred. those masks of the humpsum were so sacred that in the day, and even nowadays, I'll go to people's houses and you'll see their humpsum masks covered in blankets because the sun is not allowed to touch them. They'll tie, what do you call it, ribbons, like scarves around the beaks. So at nighttime, they don't wake up with those powerful masks clacking like they do in the potlatches when they're danced. But these things are in the art galleries. You can go to the museums, like I mentioned, and see these very supposed very sacred items, modern ones that are being sold to museums and old ones that were bought over 100 years ago. So when we look at Sasquatchology, the industry of Sasquatch, look behind me, look at all that art, those footprints, 400, 500 bucks, 250 each, or two for 400. The designs, those are originals. Those are 1,500 bucks each if someone wants them. But you can order through SasquatchLegend.com all my designs on t-shirts. And they have an online store. I'll be there tomorrow in Forks, Washington, because bah humbug, I don't like Christmas. I'm going Sasquatch investigating and staying in Forks, Washington. I'll be at the store during the afternoon painting my art and talking to people. But during the day, mornings and daytime, I'm going to be out Sasquatch investigating while everyone's sitting there putting up with family they don't like half of anyway. And they got to sit down for turkey dinner. I'm going to be walking along the beaches of the west coast of the Olympic Peninsula going, there's no one out here. They're all celebrating Christmas.
Hey, we're coming up on 2 hours, pretty close. There's one story that I have heard you talk about before, and I'd like for you to talk about that on my episode as well. And that is about the woman that was found at the rest stop.
Oh,
And the
that's a good one.
the reason I want you to get into that is because I'm curious as to your thoughts on that in relation to the Dave Paulides missing 411, and if there's any, was that a rogue male? Is I have to assume that since we're talking about a tribe of people like us, only more evolved and less evolved all at the same time, as you're going to run into people who have differing personalities. You could run into somebody who has a mental disorder. You could, I'm sure that if there are people like what you say and what I believe they are, those type of things are going to manifest in them as well. So what happened with this woman at the rest stop? And
Okay, so we'll go back a little bit. A few years ago, we were going from Campbell River west across Vancouver Island to Gold River. And we are going along the upper Campbell Lake, windy highway, cliff on one side, cliff bank, steep, couple hundred feet down to the lake. But we just had a whole bunch of coffee at breakfast. So on me, I got to go bathroom all the time. So anyway, I'm like, around that corner, you're gonna see the pullover where the cement barriers are. There's enough room to pull over. Pull over. I gotta pee. Yeah, me too. One of the guys say so. Anyway, we pull over, and as we're peeing, I'm like, "Hey guys, look down. Look at that. There's Bigfoot tracks in the pea gravel on the other side of the barrier." And all of a sudden, one of the guys tries to jump over, and I'm like, "Hey, no, 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 no! Don't do that. Look, let's follow along the asphalt here and look at the pea gravel. Look where the tracks go. Look at those piles of toilet paper." And we got up, and I'm like, "Oh, that sick bastard. He actually got down on his hands and knees, that Sasquatch, and smelled that toilet paper from that girl who urinated there and smelled it. Okay, your eyes went big, your body language ticked. We're sick. You just have to go to Pornhub or YouTube and see some of the sicko humans out there, you know? And, I don't want to say it because it's a family show, but anyway, we've commercial fishermen get real crude, joking around and so forth. But anyway, you know, just people sell panties online,
yeah,
so thinking
yeah,
about that and not thinking in that closed-minded, oh, the things we don't talk about. Talk about it. You're dealing with Sasquatches. They're just as sick as us.
yeah.
So, yes, and after I've realized Sasquatches were some of the males were sick puppies and they're bending down and smelling toilet paper wads from females. It's like, you know, I don't go in the outhouses along Vancouver Island Highway because they stink like outhouses. I go
Yeah.
pee outside them,
Right.
and you always see the female toilet paper out there. So I'm like, hey, I'm gonna start going to investigate some of these high traffic female urination sites, roadside outhouse facilities. There's probably half a dozen on the Vancouver Island Highway, and from Campbell River northwards, and started finding Sasquatch tracks, knee impressions, hand impressions. Those sick bastards, they're bending down, smelling pee piles, toilet paper piles.
Yeah.
So now thinking on that, one of those rest stops on Vancouver Island, just north of Roberts Lake and Campbell River. So we go by there, pull in there all the time. My grandmother told me she saw a mutt digging in the garbage can one time. I don't know why there's a mutt way out in the middle of nowhere. I said, that wasn't a mutt, that was a wolf digging in the garbage can. And someone had left the lid up because they have those lids that you have to have an opposable thumb to open on Vancouver Island so the bears don't get in them and wolves. But someone had left that lid open. That's why the wolf was in there. So, anyway, this rest stop had cement picnic tables, cement outhouses, and cement garbage cans with bear proof latches. So, we always stopped there. And all of a sudden, I drove by and there's all those pre-formed, custom-made, like Lego cement blocks weighing 500 pounds or whatever each. I'm like, wow, they shut down the rest stop. Didn't think much of it until I went there with one of the guys that does Sasquatch TV shows. We call him Slimy Steve. I don't even want to get into him, but anyway, I got no use for him no more. But anyway, we stopped, heard up there in Port McNeil that girl was found dead there, decapitated, left arm removed, body pummeled, clothes still intact, no sexual abuse. The police went to the house, bang, bang, bang. You have to come with us. We think we have your sister. We need you to identify. It's Canadian law. You can have their ID, but you still have to identify. So the
Yeah.
brother, I guess, went and, oh my God, that is my sister. What happened? Well, first off, we're tracking a serial killer on Vancouver Island or two, and we don't want to alarm the public. So can you please not go to the media with your sister's death or social media? And he's, yeah, okay, I'll agree to that. We just got to deal with her now. What happened? Well, she phoned me. She said she was going to drive up after work from Victoria, one end of Vancouver Island to Port McNeil, almost on the other end, the north end, and she'll be there for breakfast in the morning. Either she'll let herself in with her key late at night and sleep downstairs like she usually does and be there for breakfast, or she'll pull over in a rest stop and have a snooze and then be here around breakfast time.
Yeah.
We didn't see her at breakfast, and now we know what happened to her. Where'd you find her? Well, at this rest stop, but we don't believe a cougar, wolf, or bear or a human did it to her. We think a Sasquatch killed your sister. And apparently, after more investigating, we find out that there was apparently a discharged bear spray at the scene of the incident. And so you can imagine that girl pulling into that rest stop, and it's almost probably 320 degrees surrounded in trees. And there's a creek down below, about 60 foot down, called Big Tree Creek, and it goes under the bridge across the highway. And the rest stop is at the top of a two-lane passing lane going up on the southward side. And you can imagine her pulling in there late at night, probably got out to have a pee, took her bear spray because it's dark, and maybe there's some sicko Sasquatch on his hands and knees smelling toilet paper wads that are outside the outhouses or digging in the garbage can. Who knows? But anyway, she probably discharged the bear spray by the sounds of it to the Sasquatch, and he just went set rogue on her butt and killed her.
Yeah.
So didn't eat her though. So that didn't tells us right there that it wasn't a rogue Sasquatch.
It was a violent
So,
crime.
but
it
it
was
was
it
a
was an act
violent,
of violence.
angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, if you got bear spray in your nose and eyes, man, and your mouth, yeah, if I could, I'd probably do the same thing if someone discharged bear spray on me for no reason.
Yeah.
Pretty
Oh
gory,
wow.
scary though, eh?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it is.
they've just recently started some Facebook group, I think. I don't know. I just seen something about it. I haven't even checked on it, about the missing people on Vancouver Island over the last so many decades. We got a lot of missing people on
Just
Vancouver
a,
Island,
a
more so in
considerable amount.
northern
Yes.
British Columbia. The Highway of Tears, they call it. There's
Right.
so
Yeah.
many.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying every one of them are from Sasquatch, but
Right.
probability. Like I read something today on a post from about missing people, and it was most people that go missing are found dead in the bottom of canyon gullies, steep bluffs, hikers, hunters,
Yeah.
mushroom pickers, so forth. But the ones that aren't found, search and rescue is going out. There's that after 72 hours in Canada, it's no longer search and rescue, it's a recovery mission.
Recovery. Yeah.
But when you look at YouTube and social media and you see these gunships and helicopters killing the enemy soldiers, you can't tell me that the North American and other militaries don't know about their Sasquatch, Yeti, Yowie, Neanderthal, Almas, Almaseti, and the list goes on, Orang Pendek,
Yeah.
because these infrared are so advanced in the military and police and so forth, search and rescue. It's they know they're out there. And like I saw that one get chased by a helicopter. It was amazing footage. And unfortunately, it's not being released because the people who took it smuggled it out of somewhere it shouldn't have come from. But eventually it will. Everything comes out.
Yeah.
Even
Eventually.
look at how I got to be I guess you could help me and become an investigator in Sasquatches. Art Bell, 1991, I think it was, when I went to Alert Bay. I went to my cousin's house, who was a native carver, still is, and sat down that evening. And he's, oh, we got to listen to Art Bell. I'm like, who's Art Bell? He introduced me to Art Bell, and it was the one we listened to. I'll never forget. It was a guy who was ex-military, who was in the control room with all of the monitors of cameras that were in the tunnels that Reagan built, that had a train track, ceramic tiles, and sand above them, so that this rail line would go back and forth with all these intercontinental ballistic missiles in that desert military grounds, so that they couldn't get a direct hit from the enemy, because all the train did was stop and pop up through the tiles into sand, launch its missiles down, and then travel again. And the surveillance in this tunnel system under this military base, they were watching Sasquatches dragging in animals, food, having their regular sleeps, bringing in bushes and things to lie on. And eventually, the military said, "We got to get rid of them." So they watched the surveillance cameras while they closed the gates and the entryway to the outside, and they went in and gassed them and put them to sleep. And he watched on the monitors as all this Sasquatch family were being carted out. And he said this wasn't just a one-time case either. And so the military, the government knows Sasquatch exists. And that's what I have in my Sasquatch guidelines that I wrote, that I'll email it to people that want it. They just got to give me a donation. That was a lot of work and time. But eventually it'll be in a book they can buy. And the podcasters, I'll email it to you if you want to do another podcast on the guidelines.
Absolutely.
But one of the things it states in there is the governments have to come clean on what they know about Sasquatch.
They need to come clean on a lot of things. Not to change the subject dramatically, but over the past 3-4 years, the topic of UFOs, they don't exist for 70 how many 70 some years. Nope, you're crazy, it's nuts. And now all of a sudden, we've got videos from our airmen that are irrefutable, that they can no longer say that they don't exist.
Oh yeah.
And
Well, let's
now
just
they're,
leave it at that for another episode, and I'll tell you about the Indian connection to UFOs.
I wondered if you were ever going to bring up, the reference to star people and stuff like that, not in relation to Bigfoot. I'm not, there are some aspects of the woo that I find very interesting. And I myself feel that I experienced infrasound
That's not woo. That's a
during,
scientific fact.
well, and I know it is, but it tends to be grouped in the woo stuff when talking about Sasquatch.
No, it's just the woo woos wanting to get more recognition for woo woo.
And so long story short, I was interviewing a witch, and she was posed to me as Native American. So when I went into this interview, I was under the impression, or at least my assumption was, that she was going to be a Native American healer or a medicine woman or something of that. But she was literally a witch, in the sense of she practiced white magic, she practiced black magic. And this was very early on. This was my 5th episode. And she lived only about 35 minutes away from me. So I offered to come to her house to do the interview in person instead of doing it over a phone. And long story short, we were in the midst of the interview. Our interview was interrupted by a very, very loud, thunderous roar that was deafening. I had, at the time, I had over the ear headphones on. I whipped them off. She and I both turned to look out the window of her room, and she looked back at me and she said, "Did you hear that?" And I was like, "Did I hear that? Yeah, hell yeah, I heard it." And every inch of my body had goosebumps on it. I mean, from my calves, my thighs, my chest, the sides, everywhere. I was just covered in goosebumps. And I had very good equipment with me, and I knew for a fact, without a doubt, that my equipment picked that noise up because it was so loud. And when I went back and I played the recording back, all you can hear is at the end of her saying the word "and," at the very end of it, in the background, you can hear "ooh," almost like the hoot of an owl. It was just a "woo" at the end. And that is it. There is nothing. But the really weird thing about it is that recording, sometimes you can hear it, sometimes it's not so present. But I've had friends that have been like several feet away from me playing that audio clip from across the room, and I can hear it better from a long distance than I can when it's like right up to me. And it took me about 3 days to figure out that when that happened, in that moment when it happened, I got the goosebumps, and then it kind of faded, but it came back. And then it kind of faded off a little bit, and it wasn't quite as strong. And then it came back again, and it faded, and it wasn't quite as strong. And it took about 3 or 4 days, and it hit me that it was kind of like an electrical charge. That's how my body reacted to it. And I was like, holy shit, what if this wasn't what I heard as much as my body reacting to a infrasonic sound? And then it dawned on me. I'm like, that's what people say. That's what they're referring to when they say they got zapped when they're out in the field. And the first thing that went through my mind when it happened was, fuck, I left my gun out in the car. The second thought, and this goes back to what you and I were talking about before we even started recording. The second thought, almost right afterwards, was, shit, I got 40 pounds of dog food in the backseat of my car. And I thought, what a weird thought to have.
See, to me, it's like when I used to go fishing, and because I'm Indian, I'm allowed multiple, unlimited fishing rods. I used to go bank fishing where I put a lead with a worm, half a earthworm that I injected with a hypodermic needle, some air, so it flowed off the bottom above the weeds, about 5 feet above the bottom with my leader.
Yeah.
And I put a V stick down and rock on my rod, and eventually I would have, instead of 2 rods, I would have 8, 10 rods out. And sure enough, I'd be fighting a little pan fry, maybe a pound rainbow trout, and all of a sudden there goes one rod, and all of a sudden goes off into the water. who knows how big that big trout was, because I caught a couple that were between 5 and 8 pounds. And for Vancouver Island, that's a hefty, hefty trout in the lake. That's bragging rights. And I realized then that having over 3 rods, I wasn't able to concentrate on fishing the way I should be doing and be productive. So in other words, I'd lost 2 rods because of big fish. I'd lost numerous big trout because I wasn't able to set the hook.
Yeah.
And that's where I went back down to 1 and 2 rods. So the old Indian man got long in the tooth and wised up a bit with age through experience. So that's what I tell people about Sasquatch. So when you're investigating for Sasquatch, leave the bloody woo-woo stuff on the other end of the fence. Stay on the critterist side, because as late Dr. John Bindernagel taught me, let us get conclusive proof of the existence of the creature, and we know what it is. Then we can dwell on the possible other aspects it may or may not have.
Yeah.
And if we look at our leaders in Sasquatchology, they generally have capital D, small r period after the name. Dr. Jeff Meldrum, Dr. Robert Alley, Dr. John Bindernagel, who's no longer with us, Dr. Grover Krentz from the University of Washington, who's no longer with us. Now, and then if we look at some of the old guard that are gone, they may as well have had doctorates.
Right.
Peter Byrne, Rene DeHinden,
Hinden.
Bob Gimlin should have an honorary doctorate of Sasquatchology for all the good he's done for us, and he's still alive and with us, so be focused. Don't dwell on the other end of the fence. Think of my fishing. It's better to be a better fisherman by having 1 or 2 fishing rods than it is to have 8 to 10. You'll
Yeah.
get your fish more often than lose them. And that's how we got to look at Sasquatchology. And with the woo-woos, I mean, no offense, but you got to remember that I saw the world's largest black bear with long legs one time. I went to a bay before dark, and I tied my painter line on my 18-foot speedboat with the motor up. So I was only drawing 3 inches of water. And with hip waders on, I was walking in about 6 inches to 1.5 feet of water. The eel grass, which is usually at high tides 5-6 feet high, was flat as the current was coming in with the rising tide. And I was bending down when I'd see those cockles that are like a shelf, like a clam, but they're look like a scallop with the fringes going from the back hinge forward. And I'm grabbing the favorite food of the Sasquatch, putting it in the boat. And all of a sudden I looked up, and there's the world's longest legged black bear I ever saw. And boop, zapped. Woke up, freezing. It's dark. It's foggy. I'm in my speedboat. And I smell bull kelp. I look over the side, and I'm in a bull kelp forest. It's that kelp that floats on the surface, but its roots are affixed to the bottom 20, 30 feet down. And here I am tied up with my sideline. We use them for anchors. And I'm like, where the hell am I? Okay, what? Okay, this kelp bed. Okay, it's got to be an Indian channel. So I start the speedboat up in the fog. I get to the beach. I look up. Oh, I recognize this beach and rock wall and trees. I'm at this island. Compass course this. That'll bring me to my dock and float house. 20 minutes later, I'm in my bed warming up, no longer shivering. I can't remember what took place in about a 3.5 to 4.5 hour period, other than what I just told you.
Yeah.
And everyone goes, go get hypnotized. We'll find out what happened, because you think something happened nasty with a Sasquatch. That's what you think, right, Tom? I said, I don't know. I just know something happened. Well, go get hypnotized. I'm like, dude, I used to hunt humans for a living that didn't pay their debts and make them pay their debt. I got so many skeletons in my closet. I don't want to be hypnotized, because that person could sell that video and audio for thousands of dollars. And I might end up in Crowbar Hotel not being hypnotized. But what happened?
Yeah.
I got mental band-aided. I got so shit scared, and it was such a traumatic incident, whatever took place in that bay, that I blacked out. So when we look at people that we know that were sexually abused, physically abused, airplane crashes are a good example. You don't see them or see them on social media going, oh, it's a terrible day. I'm thinking about when I was sodomized when I was a young girl or a young boy. They don't do that.
Yeah.
the mental band-aid kicks in. Sybil's a great example of it. She just went down the mental band-aid path of how many different split personalities, and
Right.
split personality disorder is exactly that, dealing with the trauma. So when I hear people come to me and go, oh, it's just cloaked right there in front of me. And if you look at the picture right there, it's going to be cloaking, question mark. It's called blending. So I'm putting all the trees in now so that that black and white Sasquatch looks like it's cloaking, it's actually blending. Because Sasquatch have forgotten more about the bush world than we will ever know without supernatural qualities.
Yeah.
They're just a critter. That's the way I look at them. So with the mental band-aid, when you hear of the UFO flying, portal jumping, mind speaking, orb turning, cloaking Sasquatch, study the human before you study the Sasquatch. And it really will teach you a lot about how to find a Sasquatch and what Sasquatches are like. So when you look at this into someone's, why are they like that? You'll find out that they were the guy that got their head flushed in a urinal at high school and they never had a prom date. Like that guy that's running around Alberta. That's what I think he was like. I know because I used to be the bully in high school, flushing heads in the urinals that didn't give me their lunch money. You know, humans are nasty critters.
Yeah.
I was just a little nastier because I was brought up on Indian Reserve. And when I moved to the cities, I was in the east side of Vancouver, which is a pretty, you got to be tough in order to get forward in that place. And then in grade 7, I went to Shawnigan, grade 8 and 9, I went to Shawnigan Lake Boys Private School, where I was a filthy, rotten, dirty chug Indian. And I was there with all these spoiled, rotten millionaire kids that the parents didn't want. So they shoved them into a boys' boarding school. And I had them doing things to me where I hit someone so hard with my rugby cleat in the change room because he tried to do something nasty to me after I got out of the shower that the cleats on the soccer boot tore his penis. But that Aryan Nation bigot would never look at me or pick on me again. And the big German Schultz, who spit on me because I was a filthy, rotten Indian, I snuck into his bedroom at about 1:30 in the morning and beat him with a lamp thing that I built in the lathe at the woodwork shop that week. And he would never look at me or pick on me again. That's bush code. That's how bushers do it. So Indians, commercial fishermen, seaweed camp people, loggers do it. And that's how Sasquatch does it. That's why I always tell people at the end of my shows, be safe out there in your investigations and always be respectful of a Sasquatch so they don't slap you upside the head like the rogue Sasquatch will do to a disrespectful investigator. It emphasizes the point to the people that be respectful of Sasquatch because they're not like us concrete humans, or not me, I'm not one, but the concrete humans that are, I'm going to write you up. I might have to go to management about your attitude. I'm going to phone 911 on you. I'm going to get my lawyer after you. No. Sasquatch and bushers don't do it that way.
After I
So when you
take a
go into the
video of you.
Sasquatch world, you start acting like a proper human like they do. They have laws. We have laws, very strict laws. Be respectful out there. Be respectful of your fellow Sasquatch investigators. Yes, I'm adamantly anti-woo, but you don't see me going on there going, oh, you're so full of this,
Right.
yeah. But yeah, the trolls I do. I attack them ruthlessly, the trolls, and hoaxers. I got no time for trolls or hoaxers.
What are your thoughts on the TV shows? The things that have made it to TV? Who's doing it right? Who's doing it wrong?
Jeez.
My guess is
Well, the
going to
ones
be,
that are
my guess is that Les Stroud, the Survivor Man, is going to be in with the crowd that has done it right.
Watch YouTube, Sasquatch Island. There's a very interesting one where I'm on a commercial fish boat west of Clem 2.
Okay.
And why did the Indians in Clem 2, the Kitasoo tribe, why did they only bring them to the lake just at the edge of town at the wrong season when Sasquatches are supposed to be there? They weren't there that time of the year. They're in the shellfish beaches. You can tell by the foliage and the leaves and everything. And I went there with my TV show, Aboriginal Adventures Canada. And for you listeners, you can watch that on the FNX network on the internet. Aboriginal Adventures, it's called. I dress up in my traditional tunic and cedar bark headpiece, grizzly claw necklace, and go into tourism operations throughout British Columbia. It was a pretty good series back in the day in the early 2005, 2006 era. But anyway, I was in Clemtu. And they brought me into their ceremonial kilksi, their big house, and they performed their mask dances and button blanket dances and drummed for me. Why didn't they do it with less? See, so doing it properly. How do we do it properly? Well, I phoned Expedition Bigfoot when they first came out, first season. I watched it. Russell, I know Russell. He brought me to
Yeah.
his International Bigfoot Conference. He's a great guy, good businessman.
Yeah.
And, I emailed them all. And Ronnie LeBlanc got back to me and said, "Oh, something happened back in your past, and we don't want you on our TV show because it might give us a bad reflection."
Yeah, we'll get
Oh, it was
canceled.
fake news. It was about me apparently taking people into a burial ground of my people. I brought a photographer in there to get pictures for my chief and counsel's year-end report as a native watchman appointed by my chief and counsel. I just happened to be wearing my native tunic and headpiece because I wore that 24/7 out there when I was working. So anyway, it went on the internet, and of course, everyone said I was taking people into burial ground as paying clients. Bullshit! I would never do anything so disrespectful. But that was Ronnie's excuse, and and then I approached some other people and asked them, "Oh, you should get me on there." I think I know a little bit about Sasquatch, and I'm bringing the Indian perspective. And I lived in bush for decades, and I've seen them, and I've studied with numerous Indian tribes throughout Sasquatch Island, North America. I think I could really help you with your ratings. Oh, God forbid, Tom. The truth is, you'll take our spotlight. Coca-Cola and Viagra will come to you to pay you for the TV commercials because you're a famous Sasquatch guy on TV. And they'll be inviting you to the conferences and paying you. I took a chance a year ago in November, coming from Sasquatch Summit in southern Washington, West Coast. Peggy's driving. We're coming up to Tacoma, and I'm like, what the heck? The Alaska Bigfoot cruise. They got David Paulides and Jeff Meldrum and two other slots for future performers on this thing. So I just
Right.
sat there and, no offense, white man's magic, the internet on I-5, and I'm tickety, 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 tickety. And I read it to Peggy after I hit send because I didn't want her to go like a regular wife. Do you think we really have time to do that? I said that. Next thing you know, a couple days later, I get an email from Marty at Gather Up Events. Yeah, we looked into what you sent in the email and all the things and your stage performance, your speaking, YouTube clips, and you can speak well, you can perform, you're well known. Yeah, we'll bring you on the cruise. Peggy and I went to Alaska and back on a free cruise. And man, oh man, I just about to go to AA after that. All the drinks I was having with all the other almost 400 Sasquatchers that took the Alaska Bigfoot cruise. They're already selling tickets for 2024. Peggy and I are flying to Juneau for the town hall meeting. Book, book, book. It is a bucket list thing to do.
Yeah.
And podcaster needs to be on there and interviewing the 400 guests and the presenters. They got Jeff Meldrum because he got sick, and the Coast Guard had to take him off the cruise ship outside of Ketchikan this year on the southbound return.
That
What do you
actually
call it? Myra.
that actually happened during Bigfoot and Brews.
Yeah.
We had gotten news of it as it was going on while my conference was going on.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I videotaped the Coast Guard boat leaving the ship with him when we were drifting around south of Ketchikan. And, I was really concerned. He was my shipmate during that trip and a good friend of mine and business Sasquatch associate. And then this year they got Myra. I can't pronounce her name right. Myra, the one on Expedition Bigfoot, Finding Bigfoot.
Mariah Mayer.
Yeah, she's going to be on the cruise. And Dr. Robert Alley, another one of the capital D small R periods that's still with us and doing great with his book, Rain Coast Conservation and Brushes with Bigfoot and talks he does. And a good friend of mine just lives south of me. But anyway, it's with the shows and that, number one, I'm going to say it the way it needs to be said. I'm an Indian. Remember what I said earlier?
Yep.
You know, it's that.
That's
Oh,
why I'm
do we
asking
really
you.
want to bring an Indian on here? It's jealousy. I've forgotten more about Sasquatch than most of these people on TV will ever know. While everyone was sitting there using automatic light switches and flushing toilets and hot and running water and nice warm houses with heat, I was living under a tarp, wrapped around with a whole blanket and a tarp around me with a gun between my legs, leaning up against my bush partner as grizzly bears were walking around us and we're smelling Sasquatches from time to time. I was out there living like a Sasquatch while people were sitting there going, well, maybe I should get into this Sasquatch industry. It seems to be profitable.
Yeah.
So I'll get into it. And that's why they don't put me on the TV shows. So what do I got to say about it? I got sick and tired of trying to work with people like Craig Yanni, Pacific Northwest Sasquatch. Oh yeah, I'm a videographer. I'm an editor. I got the software. I'm going to do videos with you, and we're going to do TV shows and put it on Tubi and Netflix and Amazon Prime. We're going to approach the networks. I had other guys working with other Bigfoot shows tell me the same BS. And what I think it is they're promising me but shelving me, going, no, 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 we're not going to make a show with him. We just don't want him to make a show. I had one guy actually contract me up all of 2023. I couldn't work with any production companies without breaking my contract with them. And he never did. I always got an excuse why we didn't start filming native Sasquatch. So me and Peggy, we said, hell with this. So the Sasquatch Island team, we now have two P1000 Nikon telephoto built-in cameras. We have all kinds of 4K GoPros, top of the line. We got low light video cameras, lavs. Peggy's busting her butt with well over $2,000 worth of editing software programs and a new Mac top of the line laptop. And we're just going to do our own damn show and get that spotlight. We're not going to share it either.
Well, good for
Watch
you.
out for the Indians. We're
Good for
circling your
you.
wagon. Either own me and get me on your shows or suffer the ramifications of your actions and never putting me on your shows.
Yeah.
And the guidelines, there's things I'm doing because I believe that we need a policeman in the Sasquatch industry. So one of the things I'm doing is, educating people. People phone me, what do you think about this person? No, that's Slimy Steve, man. He wants to kill Sasquatch. You don't want him in your tribal territories. And now they're British Columbia coastal Indians is talking about banning one of the Sasquatch television producing guys we all know of. They're looking at banning him from coming to coastal British Columbia for any intent to film or document Sasquatch because he's known he wants to kill a Sasquatch. And he's advertised it on his social media and all over the place that he wants to shoot him with a bazooka from a helicopter. Goes out in Alaska with all the artillery weapons and everything. And then we got the shows that are on TV that, want to go out and kill a Sasquatch and they're ad-libbing all this Sasquatch stuff.
Yeah.
Like, come on now, you're 480 pounds. I used to be 100 pounds heavier. I know what it's like being an obese fat bugger in camouflage so tight that if a button popped, it'd take an eyeball out at 6 feet. That's what you look like, and you're telling me you're going to get a Sasquatch? Come on, yeah. All you're doing is trying to get ratings and money on TV
Right.
and get bumping uglies with girls at the bar afterwards of a conference. I've been to the conferences. I know what takes place. So what I'm looking at is, we got to educate people that this killing of Sasquatch has to end. Of over the 600 plus Indian tribes in North America, Sasquatch Island, not one Indian tribe will ever condone, support the killing or thinking of killing of a Sasquatch. So all of the non-Indians that are listening to this podcast, smarten the hell up and start showing that you got some frontal lobe and some intelligence and you know how to respect another bipedal creature that we share North America with. That's what I'm educating people on, as well as the slime balls that are in our Sasquatch group, our community. And we all know them. They're out there.
Yeah.
But we gotta be like I say, like a rogue Sasquatch, like a bush coat. Every now and then, give them a slap upside the head. There's been a few guys. I said, I'll meet you at the conference, and we're going to go outside behind the dumpsters behind the conference hall. One of us is going to walk back in the conference right away. And I don't think it'll be you, pal. And when I went to that conference, everyone's saying, Tom, that's the guy you're supposed to meet at the dumpster. And I went, come on, let's go. He ran out the door with his lanyard. And he never did stay or come back to the conference.
I got one more question for you, and we're going to end it because we're right about 2.5 hours. Habituation. Is it a good thing for people to try to do? Is it a bad thing for people to try to do? People that say they're doing it, is it complete and utter bullshit?
People that say they are doing it in this day of cell phones are so full of shit, their eyes should be brown. Bottom line, when in doubt, throw it out. Bunk and bullshit. That's what uh, Dr. Bindernagel taught me when we worked together and investigated together. Habituation, absolutely. Let's look back. Our generation, that's the younger generations, have to YouTube and search Indian TV commercial, Indian and buckskin paddling into an urban environment television commercial, 1970s. YouTube search that. And you're going to see this buckskin clad Indian. Actually, I think he was Italian. But anyway, he's paddling into the urban environment in his birch bark canoe, all buckskinned up, long gray hair. And he sees the effluent coming into the river. He sees the smog coming out of the factories. He sees the gridlock, rush hour, honking of horns. He sees the garbage dumps and the machines pushing mountains of garbage. He sees the dead fish in the river. He's standing on the side of a freeway, and this white vehicle goes flying by him, and a bag of fast food packaging lands at his feet. And the Indian's just standing there, and a tear rolls down his cheek.
I remember that commercial.
That started the green environmentalism movement. It helped springboard Greenpeace into an international corporation and other environmental organizations that I have no use for, because environmentalists, as far as I'm concerned, in North America are the worst invasive species to the North American Indians and Inuit and others. But anyway, the whole green movement started from that. So here we are with leaders with fingers over buttons ready to eradicate this planet. Here we are with corrupt business people that have our gas $4 or $5 more a gallon in the US. In Canada, it was over $10 a gallon a year and a half ago. And it's right now over $9 a gallon up there.
Oh
So
my God.
my pack of cigarettes cost me $12 here in Washington State. Cost me $25 if I don't go to an Indian reserve in Canada. Real estate, there's a supposed housing crisis. You know, our whole world, we're so smart, we're stupid. Our whole society is crumbling. We see people getting tattoos, lip rings, librettes, earrings, cheek rings. We see people starting to go more on the hippie path and commune path. We see survivalists and preppers building. We see people scared about this society we have that is crumbling, with our government that's supposed to be creating a beautiful world for us is actually regressing. As a species, we humans are regressing. The ones that are trying to progress to a perfect equilibrium, what humans were like Sasquatches still are the ones that are starting to go back to tribal ways of tattooing and lip plugs and cheek plugs and earrings that are huge, and this whole psyche. So we need the conclusive proof of the existence of Sasquatch and the final conclusion what it is. And then we as a species will go, maybe the fracking, deforestation, urban sprawl, pollution, open border, allowing all these people into, well, as that guy said, poison our countries, because it's the truth. You know, they're not allowing them in by legal immigration. They're allowing them just to walk through across a river into the United States and then pour across the border into Canada. We are, as a society, spiraling out of control. And once we have the conclusive proof through habituation, hopefully, and we have that Diane Fossey, Jane Goodall moment in Sasquatch on the cover of National Geographic, and as Sasquatch investigators sitting there with Kimmel and all the other night show and day show hosts, we as a species will finally go, whew, that was close. It's a good thing we found out about the third indigenous tribe of the United States and the fourth one of Canada, or North America's confirmed great ape, because it isn't human. It's on the ape branch. After all, it was Gigantopithecus. Who knew? Even
Yeah.
John Bindernagel and Tom Sewid walked away from the Gigantopithecus Blackie branch. That will give us what we need. harmony and balance. Before I end, I have a Facebook group as well, Sasquatch Island, definitely, and the website. Go check them out. But Pacific Balance Marine Management. I'm the president in Canada, British Columbia, of this organization. I sit on the National Canadian Seal and Seal Harvesters Association of the Three Coasts. And I work with the people in Washington State and Alaska, a few of them, to get the redevelopment of a seal and sea lion and sea otter harvest, like the Indians did since the dawn of creation, and like we did up until Greenpeace and the Marine Mammal Protection Act was put in place to protect the three species, which did a great job in 1972-74, where now we have an out of balance, too many seals and sea lions and sea otters decimating our marine resources. That's why I'm helping to bring the marine resources and the whole environment into balance and harmony again, like the Indians were put on this earth to do. And that's why I'm such a strong advocate for Sasquatch, because they're our last vestige for we as a bipedal species of this planet to get our shit together and quit going down this spiraling path like a lead balloon crashing to earth in flames, because that's where we're at right now. And Sasquatch is our only chance of saving us.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Sewid. Sir, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you.
That was a historic podcast, that one.
Have you covered any or all of the places that people can find you, reach out to you? How do they email you if they want more information? Your website? Give all that information one more time as we wrap it up.
The best thing is go to Sasquatch Island on Facebook, ask to join, read the rules, and I'll accept you and sit down and scroll it, learn it. It's basically my book. Sasquatch Island YouTube channel to entertain you, enthrall you, mesmerize you, and show you beautiful British Columbia coast. And then SasquatchIsland.com. That is a very informative website. My art's there in the art page and the gallery page. When you go to the gallery page, click the picture. That way you can see the bull art piece spinning on a pedestal and me talking about it. And you'll see the expeditions page where I do expeditions. And if you do want, instead of coming out here, you want me to come to your place, I'm glad to fly me out there, and I'll go teach you how to investigate a Sasquatch and hopefully get your close encounter of the hairy kind. And then don't forget, just Google my name, Tom Sewid, Sasquatch Island, Aboriginal Adventures Canada on Google, and you'll see all kinds of things pop up. You even see my court case documents and everything. Well, that'll entertain the hell out of you.
Tom, it's been an absolute pleasure. As I said at the beginning of this, you were on a short list of people that I absolutely wanted to get a chance to talk to, and sir, you did not disappoint. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate you.
That was a good one.
And
you definitely got me into different areas.
I got a feeling this is not going to be the last time we hear from you. I think we have more to talk about. So.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But for tonight, good night, sir.
Good night. See y'all. Halakasla. Go in peace.